Story 1. Wife left for an upgrade, influenced by her free spirit sister, but now her upgrade dumped her and her sister, kicked her out of her house, and she wants back. Hey everyone! I didn't think I'd be writing something like this, but it's been sitting heavy on me since last night. Maybe it'll help to get it out. If nothing else, I need to put it somewhere because my head's spinning. So I'm 33 male, been married to Kate, 32 female for 5 years. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but I always thought we had a solid thing going. We had a kid 3 years ago. He wasn't planned, but he wasn't unwanted either. When Kate found out she was pregnant, we were both kind of shocked. She'd been on birth control for years. We always said we weren't ready financially. But when it happened, we talked and agreed we'd keep him and figure it out. At the time, she was working at a local diner, pulling waitress shifts for decent tips, but it still didn't match what I brought in from construction. I've been working on job sites since I was a teenager, and it's hard work, long hours, beat up body, but it pays okay. Enough to keep us afloat, but not exactly rolling in it. So we were living in a small apartment, scraping by but managing. Once we decided to keep the baby, everything had to change fast. We needed space, somewhere safer and more long-term, so we started house hunting. She found a place she loved, 2 beds, 2 baths, bigger than what we needed honestly, but she called it her dream house. I thought it was too much. The price tag made me sick to my stomach, but she was convinced it was for our family and that we'd grow into it. I gave in, signed the mortgage, and picked up as many extra shifts as I could get. Right after that, she quit her job to focus on getting ready for the baby. That part we both agreed on. She'd stay home, I'd cover the bills. Made sense at the time. I don't regret supporting that decision, but that's when I really started feeling the weight of everything. I was working 6, sometimes 7 days a week, 10 to 12-hour shifts, trying to make sure we could pay the mortgage, stock up on baby supplies, and still afford groceries and power. When the baby came, I won't lie, it was rough. I love my kid more than anything, but that first year was brutal. Kate was always exhausted, and I mean always. I'd come home to a crying baby, a messy house, and a wife who hadn't eaten anything all day. I'd try to jump in where I could, change diapers, bottle feed, rock him when she needed a break, but I drew the line at waking up in the middle of the night. I know that's a sore spot for a lot of people, but hear me out. I operate heavy machinery. I climb ladders, lift concrete, work around rebar. If I show up to work sleep-deprived, I'm not just risking my life, I'm risking someone else's. So yeah, I told her I needed to sleep through the night, and she'd have to do the nighttime stuff. That caused arguments. She said I wasn't helping enough. I said I was doing what I could without getting myself or someone else hurt. That became the theme of our marriage. I'm doing what I can. Every time we fought, that was my line. She'd say I wasn't around enough, didn't help enough, wasn't supportive enough. I'd point at the house, the lights still on, the fridge full, and say, "This didn't just fall out of the sky, Kate." But I kept trying. I did. I'd come home sore and tired, but still tried to be present. Some nights, I'd sit there watching our son sleep and wonder if he'd even remember me at this rate. It's like I was becoming a background character in my own house. Eventually, things calmed down a bit. The kids started sleeping better. I started to think maybe we were getting through the worst of it. Like maybe we could start acting like husband and wife again, not just business partners trying to keep the lights on. About a month after the baby came, Kate brought up her sister. Said she was thinking of asking Jen to come over a few days a week to help out, hold the baby, bring food, give her a break so she could nap or take a shower. I thought it sounded like a great idea. I figured both of them could use the company, and maybe Kate could get a little more sleep. I even said, "Yeah, that's smart. Might help you both breathe a little." So Jen started coming by during the day. I'd see her maybe once or twice a week in the evenings if she stuck around. She was helping out, holding the baby, folding laundry, sometimes even cooking. Nothing seemed weird at the time. I appreciated the help, honestly. I thought we were all just doing our part. A few weeks go by, and I notice Kate's different. I don't even know how to explain it. Just colder, I guess. More like she stopped looking at me the same. The small things started to vanish. No more random texts during the day. No, "How was your day?" when I walked in. No more casual affection either. I'd go to hug her, and it felt like hugging a mannequin. I told myself I was imagining it, that she was probably still recovering. New moms go through it. Lack of sleep, hormonal shifts, all that. So I didn't bring it up. Instead, I just tried to be more helpful. I started coming home on time more, even if it meant turning down extra shifts. I'd swing by the grocery store after work, pick up stuff I knew she liked. I'd offer to watch the baby while she took a bath, even though I was running on fumes myself. She didn't really react to any of it, like it didn't register. At first, I figured I just needed to give it time. Let her get used to being a mom. Let things settle. But then she started making those comments. Stuff like, must be nice to just leave the house every day and not have to deal with screaming. Or, you get to be a person. I'm just stuck being someone's mom. I tried to take it as her venting, but after a while it stopped feeling like venting and started sounding more like she resented me, which didn't make sense to me. I wasn't off playing video games or sitting on the couch. I was out there breaking my back every day to make sure we didn't drown in bills. I said that to her once, not even in a mean way, just trying to explain. Her response, "You think paying for things makes you some kind of hero?" She said it flat, like it was just a fact, like everything I'd done meant nothing. I didn't answer. I just took the baby and rocked him while she walked off to shower. That kind of thing kept happening, one little jab at a time. She started criticizing the way I did stuff. "You're not folding that right. He doesn't like when you bounce him like that. That's not how you do bottles." I didn't even know there was a wrong way to hold your own kid until she started correcting me every time I touched him. I still kept my mouth shut. Figured maybe I was doing it wrong. I didn't grow up with a great example of a dad. Mine walked out when I was 12. I was winging it. But I was trying. What bugged me most was the silence. Kate started talking less and less. I'd come home, ask how her day was, and get a fine or same. No follow-up. No interest in my day either. I felt like a roommate who just happened to be paying the mortgage. At night, she started going to bed earlier. No more watching shows together, or late night laughing about dumb stuff. She'd say she was tired and go to the bedroom, and I'd stay out on the couch watching YouTube or nodding off halfway through a game. I tried bringing it up once, just casually. Said something like, "Hey, you've been quiet lately. Everything good?" She shrugged and said, "What is there to talk about? It's just the same thing every day." I didn't know how to respond to that. I knew what she meant. We were both stuck in this cycle of wake, feed, work, sleep, repeat. But hearing her say it like that felt off, like she'd already checked out but didn't want to say it. Still, I held on. I kept thinking things would get better once the baby got older, once he started sleeping through the night, once we had a routine again. I thought time would fix what was breaking, when really, time was just showing me how broken things were already becoming. Then, she started dropping phrases that felt foreign, not her voice. "I'm more than just a mom and wife. Zrenia, I need space to figure out who I am. Zrenia, being home all day isn't living, it's surviving." I knew those weren't just random thoughts. Someone was feeding them to her. But I didn't ask or accuse. I just took it in and kept my mouth shut. She brought up work again, this time like a demand. "I want to go back," she said. "I can't sit around here anymore playing house." "All right," I said. "If it's what you want, we'll make it work." She just nodded like she was informing me, not including me. That's what stung. The way I wasn't her partner in anything anymore. Just the guy paying the bills while she made new plans. She moved the crib to the guest room without telling me. Said she needed better sleep. I offered to help move things, and she just said, "I've got it," like I was intruding. She started watching the baby less when I got home, just handed him off and disappeared into the bedroom for hours. And when I tried to talk, it was like hitting a wall. "You don't listen, Zrenia. I don't want to argue. Logically, I just want to feel like myself again. All vague stuff, and all one-sided." I'd start to say how I felt and she'd walk away or zone out mid-sentence. I thought maybe I was just being sensitive. Maybe we were both burnt out. But then I noticed how fast she changed when her sister was around. If Jen was there when I got home, the whole energy shifted. They'd be laughing, chatting, full of life. But the second I walked in, silence. Cold. Kate would barely make eye contact. Jen would glance at me like I'd interrupted something important. I started feeling like a guest in my own house. They weren't hiding anything, at least not openly, but something was being said behind closed doors. I could feel it. Kate's opinions weren't hers anymore. Her complaints weren't new. Her attitude wasn't familiar. It's hard to explain what it's like watching your wife slowly become someone else. Not overnight, not because of one big thing, just little shifts stacking up until one day you look across the dinner table and realize the person sitting there isn't talking to you. They're just filling space. And I still had no clue how far it would go. Then Kate got hired at this retail store across town. Cashier job, decent hours. I figured fine. It'd give her something to do outside the house, and maybe she'd stop acting like being home with the baby was some prison sentence. Told her congrats, and that we'd need to figure out childcare. She said she already had that handled. Found some college girl off a community board who could come by during the day. $10 an hour, 5 hours a day. Just told me that's what was happening. That was becoming her thing now. Telling me how things were going to be. Not discussing, not planning. Just dropping announcements. After a week at the job, her entire attitude shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't pulling my weight anymore. She started making snide remarks. One night, after putting our son to bed, I sat down with her and said we needed to talk. Told her I was happy she was working again, but things were off. Told her she'd been different lately. Short, distant, and treating me like I was just in the way. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just laid it out. She crossed her arms, tilted her head like I was some clueless asshole, and said, "Maybe you just can't handle me growing." That was it for me. I leaned forward and said, "Grow all you want, but don't act like I'm the dirt you grew out of. I've carried this whole house, this whole family for years without complaining. You don't get to come home after 5 shifts and act like you've reached enlightenment." She didn't answer, just stood up and walked away like she was done with the conversation. That's when I knew. It wasn't just about working or something like that. She was trying to become someone else entirely, and she was starting to believe her own hype. I'm not against growth. I'm not against independence. But when someone uses it as a reason to look down on the person who held them up, that's not growth. That's arrogance. And yeah, I started watching everything closer after that. The way she started hiding her phone when I walked into the room. The way she laughed louder at her texts than she ever laughed at anything I said. The way she started wearing more makeup, more perfume, even though she said her job was a soul-sucking. One night it was late, maybe past midnight. I was in bed half asleep, and she was in the bathroom doing God knows what for 30 minutes. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand next to me. I wouldn't have even looked if it wasn't for the fact that the screen lit up right in my face. I saw the name first, Jen, and even though I know I shouldn't have looked, but something in me let me do it. I saw the message. "It's time you upgraded. You've wasted enough of your life playing house with a guy you settled for." Next one right after. "You deserve more than some tired construction worker. You could have had someone real from the start." Turns out the guy Kate had been seeing wasn't some new coworker. I found out from the text Jen introduced them. Yeah, she set it up. Said he was refreshing, in touch with his emotions, and on her wavelength. Said they should all get lunch, just the 3 of them. Played it off like a casual meetup, just catching up. But it was matchmaking with a side of manipulation. Kate said, "He's interesting." That was the first time she'd sounded excited about anything in months. And now it all made sense. Jen said something like, "He gets it, right?" Like I didn't. Like Kate needed someone new to mirror whatever fake version of herself she was trying on that week. And apparently that's all it took. One staged lunch, a few text messages, a little laugh at my expense, and Kate was suddenly ready to toss our whole life in the garbage. That woke me all the way up. I sat up, stared at the screen. I wasn't even angry at first. Just numb. I just kept reading it over and over. Settled. Wasted. Upgrade. Like I was a used car she was tired of driving around in public. Then she walked back in. She saw me holding the phone and froze. Dead in her tracks. Just that look like she knew it was over. "You went through my phone?" she asked. I said, "No." "Your phone lit up." I saw the message. She walked over slowly and grabbed it out of my hand. "You had no right." I said, "That's what you're worried about right now? Privacy? Not the fact that your sister is telling you to leave your husband and you didn't shut her down?" So I kept going. "You've been talking to another guy behind my back while I work 60 hours a week to pay off a house you picked out?" Then she finally said, "You don't make me feel like a woman anymore." I blinked. What does that even mean? It means I feel invisible? Like I'm just the maid, the mom, the background noise? And instead of talking to me about it, you start flirting with random guys and telling them our marriage is trash? She said, "It's not random. He sees me." I said, "So you cheat because some guy sent you a few flirty texts and made you feel sparkly inside?" Her voice got louder. "It's not just the texts. It's everything. You never check in on me. You never ask how I feel. You come home, eat, sit on the couch, and act like that's enough." I lost it a little there. I said, "You want to talk about enough? I haven't slept in years. I work until my hands bleed so you can stay in this house and play homemaker with your sister whispering in your ear all day." She fired back with, "Don't bring Jen into this. She's the only one who actually listens to me." Of course. Of course it was Jen. I should have known from the beginning. I said, "Jen doesn't even like her own life. She bounces from loser to loser, and now she's playing relationship coach? You think that's who's got your best interest at heart?" "She cares about me," Kate snapped. "She wants better for me." I just stared at her and said, "If this is what better looks like, I want no part of it." I told her we were done. I said I'd be talking to a lawyer, And if she wanted to start a new life with her upgrade, she better go do it somewhere else. She left that night, took our son, and went to Jen's. And just like that, it wasn't our house anymore. It was mine. A few days later, I got a knock on the door. It was CPS. Apparently, someone had reported that I was leaving our son home alone while I worked. I looked the caseworker dead in the eye and said, "Let me guess. Anonymous report?" She gave a slow nod. Only two people knew my schedule down to the hour: Kate and Jen. It didn't take a genius to connect the dots, but they underestimated how prepared I was. I handed over everything: sitter logs, time-stamped photos, text confirmations, even door camera footage. The sitter vouched for me on record. Case closed before it even opened. But that moment right there, that's when I knew just how low they were willing to go. I spent the next few days making calls, writing things down, saving screenshots, backing everything up. I was done being the one trying to fix something she'd already thrown in the trash. I started thinking back to all the weird comments Jen made over the years. Stuff like, "Must be nice to have a man who has your back," or "You're lucky at least he pays bills." Back then, I thought she was just venting about her own train wreck love life. But now I see it for what it really was: bitterness. Jen didn't want Kate to grow. She wanted Kate miserable, just like her. She couldn't stand the idea that her younger sister got the house, the husband, the stability. So she planted seeds until Kate couldn't even tell where her own thoughts ended, and Jen's resentment began. The next morning, I was on the phone with my lawyer. We were going over custody stuff, how to handle the house, what to expect with court timelines. Just business talk. Then came the knock. Well, not really a knock. More like a bang. I looked through the window, and there they were, Kate and her sister Jen, standing on my front porch like they had an eviction notice for me. I didn't say anything to my lawyer, just kept him on the line with my earbuds in. Opened the door. Kate pushed in first like it was still her house. Jen followed right behind her, already flaring up. "You really think you're gonna steal her child and play victim after all the crap you put her through?" Jen snapped. I didn't answer, just stepped back and let them fill the room with whatever mess they were carrying. Kate crossed her arms and said, "You've always hated that I had a voice, that I had opinions. Now I finally stand up for myself and you're trying to punish me for it." Jen chimed in again, louder this time. "You couldn't handle a strong woman, so you ran crying to a lawyer, like some little man who got his feelings hurt." I kept quiet, lawyer still on the line, listening to every word. "You controlled everything," Jen kept going. "The money, the house, the baby. You made her feel like a prisoner." Kate nodded. "I lost myself in this marriage." "You mean the marriage you walked away from after sending texts behind my back and laughing with some guy while I was working 60-hour weeks?" I asked. "That marriage?" Jen snapped. "You only ever saw her as a live-in nanny and cook. You're the reason she had to find love somewhere else." I had to pause there because it was laughable. I just looked at them both and said, "Is this the script for today? The big empowerment speech? Because none of this changes the facts." Kate raised her voice. "You're pathetic. You're bitter because I grew and you couldn't." I leaned against the wall, took a sip of my coffee. Then Jen scoffed hard. "You think you're a real man? Real men don't need lawyers to fight their battles." I didn't take the bait, lawyer still on the line, and I knew he was catching every word. I didn't owe them a meltdown. Instead, I said, "You want real? Here's real. You came to my house to call me names because I finally stopped putting up with disrespect. You want to talk about strong women? Strong women don't sneak around with other men and blame their husbands for it. And they definitely don't drag their unstable sister into their marriage like a sidekick with a grudge." Jen's face twisted. "Unstable? Your friends talks to you like you're a dog, Jen. And instead of fixing that, you came here to project your own mess into mine. That's not strong. That's sad." Kate started to say something, but I cut her off. "And you, Kate, you cheated. You chose that. And instead of owning it, you're standing in my living room trying to make me look like I'm the villain in your personal coming-of-age story." I stepped closer. "I gave everything to this family. My time, my money, my body, my sleep. And you threw it away for compliments and attention. If that's the version of growth you're proud of, then go ahead. Keep growing. Just not here." They were quiet now, still standing, but their confidence deflated a bit. I ended it with, "You can leave now. And next time you want to scream about feminism, maybe don't do it in the house that was built on my back while you were planning your exit." So after everything that went down, the cheating, the phone messages, the garbage Kate and Jen pulled at my front door, I wasn't playing nice anymore. I stopped waiting for apologies. I stopped hoping she'd own it. I went straight into dad mode and handled what mattered most: my kid. I wasn't dragging my son through chaos because his mom wanted to find herself. I called my lawyer, laid everything on the table, and said, I want full custody, not out of revenge, out of survival. He asked for every detail, so I gave it to him. Screenshots of her texts with Jen, the one telling her to upgrade and calling me a waste of time. The stuff about her feeling trapped and done pretending. I handed him phone logs, receipts, a calendar showing all the overnights, feedings, doctor visits, daycare pickups I handled. Everything I did, everything she skipped. I even had pictures of her dropping our kid off with Jen while she went for a walk that lasted 3 hours. My lawyer said, this will speak louder than anything she'll say in court. When the hearing day came, I wasn't nervous. I was tired. Tired of being treated like some placeholder. Tired of people acting like being a quiet, working dad made me less involved. My lawyer had all the files, all the records. We were ready. Kate showed up looking like she was going to a candlelight yoga class. White blouse, calm face, like she was trying to sell this peaceful, grounded version of herself. Problem was, the court doesn't buy branding. They buy consistency, and she had none. Her lawyer tried to spin the whole thing. Said Kate felt isolated, that she was pressured into domestic duties, and mentally manipulated by a workaholic husband. Basically tried to make me sound like some caveman who ignored her until she broke. But my lawyer pulled out the receipts, laid them out one by one. Months of me buying groceries, diapers, paying rent solo, photos of me taking care of our son while she was finding herself on walks with another man. The screenshot of Jen telling her I was a downgrade and her not disagreeing. Her sudden job changes, her living situation with Jen. Then, my lawyer read a quote Kate sent to Jen. I'm not trying to be a mom full-time. That's not who I am. I just need space to live before I feel stuck forever. Judge leaned back and asked her, do you deny sending this? Kate froze for a second, then said, no, but I didn't mean it like that. Then the judge turned to me, asked how I felt about co-parenting. I said, I will always support my son's right to have a relationship with his mother, but I cannot trust someone who walked away from her family and hasn't shown she's capable of putting her child first. We took a short break, then came back for the final ruling. Judge looked over his notes and said, given the presented evidence, it is in the best interest of the child for the father to be granted full legal and physical custody. My ears rang for a second. Kate looked like the air had been sucked out of her. The judge added that supervised visitation could be arranged pending future review, but she'd have to submit a parenting plan and go through counseling first. Her lawyer tried to protest, saying it was punitive. Then my lawyer stood up and said, Your Honor, not only do we have evidence of infidelity, abandonment, and inconsistent parenting, but the respondent also attempted to file a baseless cease and desist letter against my client after he requested a custody discussion. She claimed harassment, citing a single message where he asked to meet about co-parenting. The intent was clearly not legal protection. It was intimidation. It was an effort to silence him, disrupt communication, and skew documentation to appear as if he were the aggressor. He handed the court a copy of the cease and desist. The consequences of such misuse, he continued, aren't just legal, they're ethical. It speaks to the respondent's state of mind and willingness to manipulate the legal system. We are not asking for punishment. We're asking for protection, for clarity, and for the child's best interest to remain the priority. And that was that. The divorce was finalized an hour later. No alimony or property split. The house was mine. I'd been paying the whole mortgage solo. She didn't even argue. Just signed the papers like she was watching it all happen from outside her body. Then I walked away. Since then, she's been quiet. She sees our son for 2 hours, twice a month, at a supervised center with a court rep present. I never interfere. I don't even go in. I drop him off and pick him up like clockwork. She tries to be affectionate during visits, but he's confused, doesn't cry when she leaves. Just say bye and goes back to watching cartoons in the car. I don't badmouth her. I never will. I tell him, Mommy loves you. She just lives somewhere else. Weeks went by. It was just another quiet night. My son was passed out on the couch under a blanket. Then came the knock. I opened the door, and there she was, Kate. She looked like hell. Before I could speak, she blurted everything out. I'm not staying at Jen's anymore. I just raised an eyebrow. She kicked me out. After everything she told me to do, how I should leave you, how I deserve more, how I needed to grow, she turned on me the second her new boyfriend started spending the night. She kept going, fast, almost like she was scared if she stopped. I'd close the door mid-sentence. She said I needed to pay rent or get out. Told me she didn't want Mark thinking she was hosting a loser with baggage. We had a huge fight. Screaming match. She said I cheated like a fool and ruined my own life, and that she didn't owe me anything. She was bitter and shaky. She's playing house now, making dinner every night, wearing dresses, obeying this guy like she's been a church wife all along. The same one who told me to run from being just a wife and mom is now baking bread for a man who yells when she talks too long. I said nothing, just leaned on the doorframe and waited. Kate looked me in the eye, breathing heavy, like her whole life was stuck in her throat. I messed everything up. I know that. I let Jen poison my head. I thought I was doing the right thing, I swear. But it was all garbage. I threw away my family. I walked out on the only man who ever actually loved me. And I did it for what? For compliments from a guy I don't even talk to anymore? For freedom that turned into sleeping on floors? She then said, crying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I blamed you. I'm sorry I cheated. I was selfish. I lost my mind. I miss our son. I miss this house. I miss being yours. Then I spoke. You cheated. You blamed me. You dragged me into court and tried to take our son after blowing up your own life. She opened her mouth to say something else. I don't care, I said. Please, she whispered. I have nothing. I looked her dead in the face. That's not my business. She looked past me and asked, Can I at least say goodnight to him? I said, You've got 2 hours, twice a month. Say goodnight then. Then I shut the door. These days, the house is finally quiet and not the tense walk-on-glass kind of quiet. My son laughs more. I sleep better. I don't have to explain why I'm tired or defend the fact that I work my ass off to keep a roof over our heads. All that empowerment talk, a lot of it's just repackaged selfishness. I need to grow. I need to find myself. I'm more than a mom or wife. That's fine until it becomes a free pass to cheat, disrespect, and abandon your family while painting yourself as the victim. If your growth means torching the people who built with you, you're not evolving. You're just stepping on their shoulders to feel tall. To any guy reading this, don't let modern pity feminism make you feel small for being a man who shows up, or say you're insecure because you don't want her texting friends who call you a downgrade. Sometimes starting over is the best thing you'll ever do. Not for revenge, just to breathe again. You don't need someone who needs to find themselves in another man's DMs. You need peace, purpose, and your damn self back. Let the rest take care of itself. Story 2. Family didn't invite me to Christmas because it's no place for losers, my brother said. I calmly agreed and stopped funding his kids and wife. Now he's begging. My name is Baylor, and for 32 years, I've been the family ATM. Not the favorite son, not the success story they brag about at dinner parties, just the reliable one who pays the bills when everyone else comes up short. My younger brother Trevor has always been the golden child, the one with the charm and the big dreams, while I've been the one working double shifts to make sure his dreams don't turn into nightmares. It all started when we were kids. Trevor was the athlete, the popular one, the kid who could talk his way out of trouble with a smile and a joke. I was the quiet one who got good grades, worked part-time jobs in high school, and somehow always ended up covering for Trevor's mistakes. When he crashed Dad's car at 17, I gave him my summer job savings to help with the deductible. When he needed money for college applications, I worked extra shifts at the grocery store. It became a pattern that followed us into adulthood. After college, Trevor married his high school sweetheart, Jessica, and they had 2 kids, Emma and Jake. Beautiful kids, smart as whips, and I loved them like they were my own. Trevor bounced from job to job, always chasing the next big opportunity, the next get-rich-quick scheme. Jessica worked part-time as a dental hygienist, but with 2 kids and Trevor's inconsistent income, they struggled constantly. That's where I came in. Uncle Baylor, the guy who never missed a birthday, never forgot Christmas presents, and somehow always had money when the lights were about to get shut off. I worked as an IT manager for a mid-sized company, made decent money, lived modestly in a 1-bedroom apartment, and directed most of my extra income toward keeping Trevor's family afloat. The list of things I'd paid for over the years was staggering. Emma's dance classes, Jake's soccer league fees, emergency car repairs when Trevor's transmission died, groceries when the cupboards were bare, the deposit on their apartment when they got evicted from the previous one. I calculated once that over 10 years, I'd given them close to $80,000. Not loans, mind you. Gifts. Because family helps family, right? My parents, Patricia and Robert, lived comfortably on Dad's pension and Mom's part-time job at the local library. They weren't rich, but they weren't struggling either. They'd help Trevor occasionally with small amounts, but somehow the big emergencies always fell to me. Baylor is so responsible, Mom would say. He doesn't mind helping out his brother, except I was starting to mind. A lot. The breaking point began building 3 months before Christmas. Trevor called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice tight with stress. Baylor, man, I need a favor. I was sitting in my apartment, eating leftover takeout and watching Netflix after a 12-hour day debugging server issues. What's up? Jessica's hours got cut at work, and Jake needs this special equipment for his football team. It's expensive, but if he doesn't have it, he can't play. And you know how important this is to him. Jake was 11 and decent at football, but he wasn't exactly heading for the NFL. Still, I cared about the kid. How much are we talking? $500 for the gear, plus I need to cover the team fees, so maybe $800 total? I sighed. Trevor, I just covered your rent last month. I know, and I'm grateful. This is different. It's for Jake. You wouldn't want him to miss out because his dad's going through a rough patch, right? The guilt trip. Classic Trevor. I transferred the money the next day. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through Facebook during my lunch break when I saw photos from Jessica's girls' night out. Expensive-looking restaurant, cocktails, her and 3 friends posing with plates of food that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. The photos were posted the same day I'd sent the money for Jake's football gear. When Trevor called the following month asking for help with their car insurance payment, I asked about the girls' night. Oh, that. Yeah, well, Jessica needed to blow off some steam. Work's been stressing her out. With money I sent for Jake's football? Baylor, come on. We're juggling a lot here. Sometimes we have to borrow from one thing to pay for another. It all evens out. It all evens out. That became Trevor's catchphrase whenever I questioned how my money was being spent. When I saw photos of his new fishing rod and tackle box on Instagram after I'd covered their electric bill. When Jessica posted pictures of her fresh highlights and manicure after I'd paid for Emma's school supplies. It all evens out. The pattern was so established that Trevor barely pretended anymore. He'd call, explain the crisis, name the amount needed, and expect the money to appear in his account within 24 hours. And like an idiot, I kept sending it. What made it worse was how I was treated at family gatherings. Trevor was always the center of attention, regaling everyone with stories about his latest business venture or the kids' achievements. I'd sit on the sidelines nodding politely while he took credit for providing opportunities I'd actually paid for. Jake's doing so well in football, he'd tell relatives. We invested in getting him the right equipment, and it's really paying off. Emma's dance recital was beautiful. We're so proud of her. The lessons are expensive, but it's worth it to see her shine. We invested. We're proud. Never a mention of Uncle Baylor, who made it all possible. During Thanksgiving dinner 2 months before the Christmas incident, Trevor announced his latest entrepreneurial venture. I'm starting a landscaping business, he said, gesturing with his fork. Going to be my own boss, set my own hours. I've got it all figured out. That sounds wonderful, honey, Mom said, beaming. You've always been so creative. I'd heard variations of this speech dozens of times. The food truck business that lasted 3 weeks. The online retail store that never sold anything. The personal training certification he got but never used. Each one was going to be the thing that finally made him rich and independent. The startup costs are pretty steep, though, Trevor continued, glancing in my direction. Need to get a truck, equipment, insurance. Probably looking at $15,000, $20,000 to get it off the ground properly. The table went quiet. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for me to offer to bankroll Trevor's latest dream. Instead, I cut into my turkey and said, Sounds like you'll need to save up or get a business loan. Trevor's face fell. Yeah, well, banks are pretty strict about lending to new businesses. For good reason, I said. Most small businesses fail within the first year. The tension at the table was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jessica shot me a look that could have frozen water. Mom cleared her throat and changed the subject to Emma's upcoming dance recital. After dinner, Trevor cornered me in the kitchen while I was helping with dishes. What was that about? He asked, his voice low and angry. What was what about? You know what? The business loan comment? You've always helped before. I set down the plate I was drying and turned to face him. Trevor, I've given you thousands of dollars over the years. Maybe it's time you figured out how to stand on your own. Stand on my own? His voice rose. Easy for you to say. You don't have kids. You don't have responsibilities. I don't have kids because I've been supporting yours. The words hung in the air between us. Trevor's face flushed red. Nobody asked you to do that. You literally ask me every month. That's different. That's emergencies. This is my future we're talking about. I dried my hands on the dish towel and headed for the door. Your future isn't my responsibility, Trevor. That conversation marked the beginning of the end, though I didn't know it at the time. Trevor stopped calling as frequently, and when he did, there was a coldness in his voice that hadn't been there before. Jessica unfriended me on Facebook. The kids still hugged me when they saw me, but there was an awkwardness that hadn't existed before. 3 weeks before Christmas, I got a call from Mom. Baylor, honey, We need to talk about Christmas dinner. I was at my desk at work, trying to solve a network issue that had been plaguing us for days. What about it? Well, Trevor and Jessica think it might be better if we kept it small this year. Just immediate family. I blinked, not understanding. I am immediate family. Mom sighed. You know what I mean. Trevor and Jessica and the kids. They're feeling a little stressed about money right now, and having someone there well, who they owe money to. It might make things uncomfortable. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Are you uninviting me to Christmas? It's not that we don't want you there, Mom said quickly. It's just that Trevor thinks it would be awkward. And you know how he gets when he's stressed. How he gets when he's stressed. Mom, I've been keeping his family fed and housed for 10 years. And we appreciate that, sweetheart. But maybe this year you could do your own thing? Visit friends? Take a vacation? I sat in my office chair, staring at the computer screen, trying to process what I was hearing. My own mother was disinviting me from Christmas because my financial support made my brother uncomfortable. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. Trevor owes me thousands of dollars, hasn't paid back a cent, and now I'm banned from Christmas because my presence might remind him of that fact? Baylor, please don't make this harder than it has to be. I hung up without saying goodbye. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Trevor. Look, man, I heard Mom talk to you. Yeah, she did. It's nothing personal. It's just that Jessica's been really stressed about the money situation, and having you there would make it weird for everyone. Weird for everyone or weird for you? Come on, don't be like that. You know how these family things go. It's supposed to be relaxed, fun. We can't relax if we're worried about you judging us or keeping track of what we owe you. I laughed, a bitter sound. I've never once asked you to pay me back, Trevor. Not once. I know, but it's implied, isn't it? Every time you look at us, we can see you calculating what we cost you. Maybe because you do cost me. A lot. See? That's exactly what I'm talking about. This attitude, Christmas is supposed to be about family, not about money. Right. And apparently, there's no place for losers like me at the family table. The line went quiet. I could hear Trevor breathing, could picture him trying to figure out how to respond. I never said you were a loser. You didn't have to. I hung up and sat in my office, staring out the window at the December sky. The company holiday party decorations sparkled around me, but I felt empty. For 10 years, I'd prioritized Trevor's family over my own life, my own future, my own happiness. And in return, I'd been labeled a burden, someone whose presence would ruin their Christmas. That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and started going through my financial records, automatic payments, bank transfers, Venmo transactions. Over the past year alone, I'd sent Trevor and Jessica $12,400 for their rent, their car payment, the kids' activities, emergency expenses that seemed to pop up every month like clockwork. I canceled every automatic payment, the ones for Emma's dance classes, the ones for Jake's sports fees, the monthly contribution to their grocery budget that Trevor had convinced me to set up because it's easier to budget when we know we can count on it. Gone. All of it. Then, I called my bank and put a block on any future transfers to Trevor's account without my explicit approval for each transaction. By the time I was done, I'd severed every financial tie that bound me to Trevor's family. It felt strange, like cutting strings that had controlled me for a decade, but it also felt liberating. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. I just went to work the next day, came home to my quiet apartment, and for the first time in years, didn't check my phone obsessively to see if Trevor needed money for some new crisis. Christmas came and went. I spent it alone, which should have been depressing, but actually felt peaceful. I cooked myself a nice dinner, watched movies, and didn't think about what Trevor's family was doing without me. I didn't send presents. I didn't call. I simply let Christmas happen without me. The first crack in Trevor's perfect little family Christmas came on December 28th. Jessica called me. Baylor? It's Jessica. I was surprised to hear from her. We hadn't spoken directly in months. Hi, Jessica. Listen, I know things have been weird lately, but we have a problem. Emma's dance studio is threatening to drop her from classes if we don't pay the balance by January 2nd. I know you usually handle that, but the payment didn't go through this month. I canceled the automatic payments. Silence on the other end of the line. What? I canceled all the automatic payments. I won't be covering Emma's dance classes anymore. But Baylor, she's been in this program for 3 years. She's finally getting good parts in the recitals. You can't just... I can. And I did. Trevor made it clear that there's no place for losers like me in your family. So I'm not part of your family anymore, which means your family expenses aren't my problem. Baylor, that's not... Trevor didn't mean it like that. Oh, How did he mean it, Jessica? She stumbled over her words, trying to find a way to explain away what couldn't be explained away. He was just stressed. You know how he gets. I know exactly how he gets. And I know exactly what he meant. Emma's dance classes are your responsibility now. We can't afford them without your help. Then I guess Emma will have to find a more affordable hobby. I hung up, feeling bad for Emma, but resolved to stick to my decision. 5 minutes later, Trevor called. What the hell, Baylor? Jessica's crying because you're cutting off Emma's dance classes. I'm cutting off everything, Trevor. All of it. You wanted a Christmas without the loser brother? Congratulations. You get a life without the loser brother, too. Come on, man, you're being petty. So we didn't invite you to one Christmas dinner. Big deal, get over it. It's not about one dinner, Trevor. It's about 10 years of being treated like an ATM instead of a brother. We don't treat you like an ATM, I laughed. When's the last time you called me just to talk? When's the last time you asked how I was doing? When's the last time we hung out without you needing money for something? Silence. That's what I thought. Baylor, listen, I'm sorry about the Christmas thing. We can do New Year's instead. Big family dinner, just like always. With me paying for the groceries? Well, if you want to contribute... No, Trevor, I'm done contributing. To anything. Your rent, your car payment, your kids' activities, your wife's girls' nights. Done. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Figure it out yourself. The next few weeks were blissfully quiet. No emergency calls about past due bills. No last-minute requests for grocery money. No guilt trips about letting down the kids. For the first time in a decade, my bank account grew instead of shrank every month. I used the money I would have given Trevor to finally take that vacation I'd been putting off for years. I booked a week in Costa Rica, something I dreamed about but never done, because there was always some family crisis that required my funds instead. While I was lying on a beach in Tamarindo, sipping a cold beer and watching the sunset, my phone buzzed with increasingly desperate messages from Trevor. Baylor, call me. We need to talk. Dude, the mortgage company is threatening foreclosure. I need help. Baylor, please. The kids are asking why you haven't called. I read each message, felt a familiar pang of guilt, and then deleted them without responding. This was Trevor's test. Could he handle his own life without his big brother's financial safety net? The answer, apparently, was no. I came back from Costa Rica to find 23 missed calls from various family members. Mom, Dad, Trevor, Jessica, even Jessica's mother had called to tell me I needed to step up and help my brother. The first call I returned was to Mom. Baylor, thank goodness. Trevor's been trying to reach you for weeks. I know, I was on vacation. Vacation? While your brother's family is falling apart? My brother's family fell apart the day they decided I wasn't good enough to join them for Christmas. That's ancient history now, sweetheart. Trevor needs your help. They're behind on everything. The mortgage, the car payments, the kids' school fees. They might lose the house. Then maybe Trevor should get a job that pays enough to support his family. He has a job. Part-time at a sporting goods store, Mom. That's not a career. That's something teenagers do after school. You can't just abandon them. I'm not abandoning them. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. Mom sighed dramatically. I don't understand what's gotten into you. What's gotten into me is self-respect. Something I should have developed years ago. The conversation with Dad went similarly, except he tried the disappointed father approach. I raised you better than this, Baylor. Family takes care of family. I've been taking care of this family for 10 years, Dad. Where were you when Trevor needed help? We helped when we could. You helped with $50 here and there. I was sending thousands. Because you make more money. I make more money because I worked for it. I got an education, found a good job, and lived below my means. Trevor chose to coast on my generosity instead of building a career. He's trying. He's 30 years old, Dad. How long is he going to keep trying before he actually succeeds at something? Dad didn't have an answer for that. The most heartbreaking call came from Emma. She was 12 now, old enough to understand that something had changed, but not old enough to understand why. Uncle Baylor? It's Emma. Her voice was small, uncertain. It broke my heart. Hi, sweetheart. How are you? I'm okay, I guess. Mom says I can't do dance anymore because it's too expensive, and Daddy's been really sad lately. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her disappointment. I'm sorry to hear that, Emma. Are you mad at us? The innocent question hit me like a truck. I'm not mad at you, Emma. Not at all. Then why don't you come over anymore? Jake misses you too. We used to play video games all the time. It's complicated, sweetheart. It's a grown-up problem between me and your dad. Can't you just say sorry to each other and make up? If only it were that simple. Maybe someday, Emma. After I hung up with Emma, I sat in my apartment, questioning whether I was doing the right thing. These kids didn't ask to be born into a family where their father couldn't provide for them. They didn't deserve to suffer because of the conflict between Trevor and me. But I also knew that if I caved now, nothing would change. Trevor would learn that he could treat me however he wanted, and I'd still be there to bail him out. The pattern would continue indefinitely. I had to stay strong. February brought a new wave of desperation from Trevor. He'd lost the part-time job at the sporting goods store for showing up late too often. Jessica was working extra shifts at the dental office, but it wasn't enough to cover their expenses without my monthly contributions. Trevor started showing up at my apartment building, waiting for me in the parking lot when I got home from work. Baylor, we need to talk. I saw him before he saw me and considered turning around and driving away, but that would just delay the inevitable conversation. What do you want, Trevor? I want my brother back. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his clothes were wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, I felt sorry for him. I'm right here. No, you're not. You're angry and bitter, and you're taking it out on Jessica and the kids. I'm not taking anything out on anyone. I'm just not paying your bills anymore. Baylor, we're going to lose everything. The house, the cars, everything. Is that what you want? What I want is for you to take responsibility for your own life. I am taking responsibility. I'm looking for a better job. I'm trying to get the landscaping business off the ground. With what money? You couldn't afford to start the business when you had my financial support. How are you going to do it now? Trevor ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I remembered from childhood when he was frustrated. I need help, Baylor. Just temporary. Just until I get back on my feet. How many times have I heard that over the past 10 years? This time is different. This time is different because I'm not falling for it anymore. Trevor's expression hardened. You know what your problem is. You're bitter because I have a family and you don't. You're alone and you're jealous. So you're trying to destroy what I've built. His words stung because there was a grain of truth in them. I was alone. I didn't have a wife or kids, but I'd made those sacrifices to support his family. You know why I don't have a family, Trevor? Because every time I saved money to buy a house, or take a woman on a nice vacation, or do anything to improve my own life, you had an emergency that required my savings. I put my life on hold for 10 years to support yours. Nobody asked you to do that. You asked me to do that. Every month, every crisis, every time you called crying about being broke. I never cried. You're crying now? Trevor wiped his eyes angrily. This isn't crying. This is frustration. This is consequences, Trevor. For the first time in your life, you're experiencing actual consequences for your choices. My choices? What about your choice to abandon your niece and nephew? The guilt trip. I'd been waiting for it. I didn't abandon Emma and Jake. I stopped enabling their father. They don't understand the difference. Then explain it to them. Tell them that Uncle Baylor isn't their personal ATM anymore. Trevor stood there for a moment, breathing heavily. Then he said the thing I knew was coming. If you don't help us, we're going to lose the house. Emma and Jake will have to change schools. Jessica might have to quit her job if we move too far away. You're going to destroy 2 innocent kids' lives because you're mad at me. I'm going to let you be responsible for your own family. Same thing. No, Trevor, it's not. He left after that, but I knew he'd be back. The foreclosure process takes months, and Trevor would spend every one of those months trying to guilt, manipulate, or convince me to save him one more time. March brought the divorce papers. Jessica filed for divorce and moved back in with her parents, taking Emma and Jake with her. The official reason was irreconcilable differences, but everyone in the family knew the real reason. Trevor couldn't provide for his family, and without my financial support, the whole house of cards had collapsed. Trevor called me, sobbing this time for real. Are you happy now? My wife left me. She took my kids. I'm going to lose the house. Everything's falling apart. I felt genuinely sorry for him, but I also knew that this collapse had been inevitable. I'd just been postponing it with regular infusions of cash. I'm not happy about any of this, Trevor. Then help me fix it. I can't fix your marriage. I can't fix your relationship with your kids. I can't fix the fact that you're 30 years old with no real job skills or career prospects. You could help me keep the house. If I can show Jessica that I've got the mortgage covered, maybe she'll come back. With money I give you? Just temporarily. No, Trevor. Jessica left because you can't support your family. If you get her back by using my money, what happens when I stop giving you money? She leaves again? I'll figure something out by then. You've been saying that for 10 years. After Trevor lost the house, he moved into a studio apartment across town. He got a job at a call center, something with regular hours and a steady, if modest, paycheck. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. Jessica and the kids stayed with her parents. The divorce proceedings were messy and expensive, with both sides hiring lawyers they couldn't afford. Through all of this, I maintained my boundaries. No emergency loans, no temporary assistance, no bailouts of any kind. It was hard, especially when I thought about Emma and Jake dealing with their parents' divorce, but I knew that caving now would just restart the cycle. The turning point came in June. I was having dinner at a restaurant downtown when I saw Trevor at a corner table. He was with a woman I didn't recognize, someone pretty and well-dressed who was laughing at something he'd said. For a moment, I was angry. Here he was, taking some woman out for an expensive dinner while claiming he was broke. But then I noticed something. Trevor looked different, healthier. He'd gained back the weight he'd lost. His clothes were clean and pressed, and there was something in his posture that I hadn't seen in years. Confidence. Our eyes met across the restaurant. He said something to the woman, then walked over to my table. Baylor. Trevor. Can I sit down for a minute? I gestured to the empty chair across from me. He sat down and folded his hands on the table. I owe you an apology. I waited. Actually, I owe you a lot of apologies. And probably some money, but we both know I can't pay that back right now. What's changed? Everything. Losing the house, losing Jessica and the kids, having to move into that crappy apartment and work at the call center. It was horrible. But it was also the best thing that ever happened to me. How so? Because for the first time in my adult life, I had to figure things out for myself. No safety net. No big brother to call when things got tough. Just me and my problems. Trevor looked back at the woman at the corner table, who was patiently waiting for him to return. That's Sarah. She's an accountant. We met at work. She doesn't know about all the stuff with you and the money and everything. She thinks I'm just a normal guy who works at a call center and lives in a studio apartment. Isn't that what you are? Trevor smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in years. Yeah, it is. And you know what? It's not so bad. The work is steady, the pay is decent, and I'm not constantly stressed about money because I'm living within my means. What about Jessica and the kids? The divorce will be final next month. Jessica and I are doing better as co-parents than we ever did as spouses. The kids are adjusting. Emma's in a community center dance program that costs $20 a month instead of $200. Jake's playing in a community soccer league that's free. They're happy. Trevor reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He counted out four $20 bills and placed them on the table. This is all I can afford right now, but I want to start paying you back. $80 a month until I've repaid everything I owe you. I looked at the money on the table. At $80 a month, it would take Trevor about 80 years to pay back what he owed me. Keep it, I said, pushing the bills back toward him. Take Sarah out for a nice dinner. Trevor's eyes filled with tears. Baylor, You don't owe me money, Trevor. You owe me an apology and respect. And maybe we could try being actual brothers instead of whatever dysfunctional relationship we had before. I'd like that. We shook hands across the table, and for the first time in months, I felt like I had my brother back. The family slowly began to heal over the following months. Mom and Dad, who had initially blamed me for Trevor's downfall, gradually came to understand that I'd done him a favor by forcing him to stand on his own feet. Trevor's transformation from entitled mooch to responsible adult was impossible to ignore. Christmas that year was different. We had dinner at Mom and Dad's house, all of us together. But this time, Trevor brought a bottle of wine and a homemade dessert. He didn't ask for money. He didn't hint about financial problems. He just enjoyed being with his family. Emma and Jake were there too, shuttling between their parents' houses in the new normal of joint custody. They seemed happier than I'd seen them in years, probably because their parents weren't constantly fighting about money. Uncle Baylor, Emma said as we were opening presents. Thank you for the dance shoes. I'd bought her a pair of ballet slippers for her community center classes. They weren't expensive, but she acted like they were made of gold. You're welcome, sweetheart. Daddy says you helped him become a better person. Is that true? I looked at Trevor, who was helping Jake assemble a new Lego set. Your daddy helped himself become a better person. I just stopped making it so easy for him to avoid growing up. I don't understand. You will when you're older. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the past year. It had been hard, probably the hardest year of my adult life. There had been moments when I'd questioned whether I was doing the right thing, moments when I'd nearly caved and sent money to ease some crisis or another. But seeing Trevor now, genuinely happy and self-sufficient for the first time in his adult life, I knew I'd made the right choice. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their weaknesses. My phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. Thanks for dinner tonight, and thanks for everything else. Love you, bro. I smiled and typed back. Love you too. See you next week for Jake's soccer game. It was a small thing, making plans to see each other that didn't involve money or emergencies. But after 10 years of being treated like an ATM, it felt revolutionary. I'd finally gotten my brother back. And more importantly, I'd gotten myself back. The best part about setting boundaries wasn't just that it forced Trevor to grow up. It was that it freed me to start living my own life. With an extra $1,000 a month staying in my account instead of flowing to Trevor's family, I was able to make down payment on a house, start dating seriously for the first time in years, and even begin planning for my own future instead of constantly managing someone else's crisis. Sometimes being a good brother means saying no. It took me 32 years to learn that lesson, but better late than never. Story 3. My nephew yelled, "Dad says people like you don't earn nice things," then smashed my father's watch while his parents laughed. 2 years funding their entire life ended that night. Next came eviction notices, restraining orders, and police at their door. Hey, Reddit, thought helping family would bring us closer. Instead, it blew up in my face with lies, threats, and cops at the door. Before all that chaos, let me start from the beginning. My name's Lucas Hale. I'm 38, live just outside of Flagstaff with my daughter Rowan. I run a small auto shop and still turn wrenches. Nothing fancy, but it pays the bills, and I like the quiet. Her mom's been out of the picture for years. That part of my life went bad a long time ago, but I've managed to keep things steady since. Or at least I thought I had. My younger brother Marcus is 34. He married this woman, Sienna, 5 years ago. They've got 2 kids, Caleb, who's 10, and Emery, who's 7. When Marcus lost his job 2 years back, I stepped in to help. Rent, car loan, kids' school tuition, I covered it all. I was the listed payer on their school account. Our district runs kindergarten through 6th grade on one campus, so all 3 kids are at the same school. Rowan and Caleb even share lunch and recess. Last month was my birthday. I didn't want a big thing, just dinner with family at a nice place downtown. I booked it 3 weeks early. Outdoor seating, good food, quiet enough so Rowan wouldn't feel overwhelmed. She's 11, shy, and birthdays have always been our thing. Marcus and Sienna showed up late. They always do. Marcus barely said hello before sitting down. Sienna smiled like we were best friends, even though she rarely calls unless she needs something. Caleb ran straight to the tables, loud as ever, while Emery trailed behind with a tablet in her hand. Rowan sat beside me, excited about the creme brulee she'd been talking about for days. My mom was already there, making small talk about the weather. It felt normal for maybe 5 minutes. Then Caleb started. He climbed on chairs, grabbed bread rolls with his hands, talked over everyone. Marcus told him twice to settle down, but didn't mean it. Sienna laughed like it was cute. Nobody else said anything. That's how it always goes with them. Caleb gets away with everything because calling him out means drama, and my mom avoids drama like it's fire. I kept my head down. It was my birthday. I just wanted peace. Dinner came and went without too much chaos. I thought maybe we were in the clear. Then the waitress brought out the cake, a single slice with a candle. I didn't even ask for it. The restaurant does it automatically. People clapped. I smiled, said thanks. That's when it happened. My dad passed away 6 years ago. Left me his old watch, nothing expensive but real sentimental. Worn leather band, small crack on the glass, kept it clean and working because it was one of the few things of his I had left. While I was leaning forward to blow out the candle, Caleb slipped behind me. Before anyone could say a word, he yanked the watch right off my wrist. "Hey!" I started, but he was already holding it up like a trophy. "Dad says people like you don't earn nice things," he yelled, loud enough for the whole patio to hear. And then he threw it. Over the railing. It hit the concrete walkway below with this sound I'll never forget. Metal on stone, sharp and final. The strap snapped. The back popped off. The glass shattered completely. For a second, nobody moved. Then Sienna laughed. Like, full-on laughed. Tears in her eyes kind of laugh. Marcus smirked but didn't say a word. Rowan froze in her seat, eyes wide. My mom muttered something about boys being boys. I didn't yell, didn't make a scene. I just stood up, grabbed my jacket, and told Rowan we were leaving. Paid the bill on the way out. Nobody stopped us. Nobody apologized. I picked up what was left of the watch on the sidewalk. The strap was in 2 pieces. The back plate was bent. It was done for. Rowan didn't say anything in the car. She just held the box with the leftover cake on her lap. I think she knew I didn't want to talk right then. When we got home, I put the watch in a drawer. Sat there for a minute, staring at the wall. 2 years. Rent, car payments, tuition, thousands of dollars. All the times I said yes when I should have said no. And this is what I get? I opened my laptop, logged into the bank account, canceled every single payment tied to Marcus Hale. Rent, gone. Car loan, Gone. School tuition. Gone. Somewhere along the line, the car autopay had failed 2 months back. I hadn't caught it until now. Not a word to anybody. That night, I didn't answer the phone. Marcus called twice. Sienna texted some fake sweet, thanks for dinner message like nothing happened. They had no idea what was coming. By morning, the first text came in from Marcus. No, good morning. No, hey, what happened last night? Just, car's gone. Did you cancel something? I didn't reply. Looks like the loan had already hit active repo status. Canceling my autopay just meant the repo truck came the next morning. I let it sit. He called twice, straight to voicemail. By noon, Sienna texted me. Fake sweet like always. Hey Lucas, did you forget the car loan this month? No biggie, just wondering. I didn't answer her either. By dinner time, Mom called. She didn't even say hi before asking, Lucas, did you change something with Marcus's car payment? Yeah, I said. I stopped paying it. I didn't know you were paying his bills, she said. Nobody did, I said. She paused like she didn't know what to say next. Oh, okay. Well, Marcus said it got repossessed this morning. Yep, I said. Another pause. Then, maybe you should have given him a heads up first. I gave him 2 years of heads up, I said. She sighed the way moms do when they want you to feel guilty, but don't want to say it out loud. By the next day, Marcus switched from confused to mad. Are you kidding me? You couldn't even warn us? How are we supposed to get to work now? Work? He hadn't had a job in 2 years. At least not that I knew of. Maybe he'd picked up shifts somewhere and just hadn't said. He called 3 more times before noon. Left a voicemail saying, we can talk this out like adults if you just pick up. I didn't. Later that night, Sienna sent a longer text. Sienna, look, I don't know what your problem is, but punishing the kids isn't fair. They didn't do anything. Didn't do anything? I pictured Caleb on that patio, holding my dad's watch like a trophy. Another text followed. Sienna, rent's due this week too. Can you at least send that so we don't fall behind? Just until Marcus finds steady work? I typed out a response, then deleted it. Better to let the silence do the talking. The next day, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the window. Marcus. I opened it just enough to step outside. What? He looked rough. Hoodie, unshaven, circles under his eyes. You couldn't give me 1 month? Just one? I kept my voice calm. I gave you 2 years. He shifted like he didn't know what to say next. Sienna's freaking out. Rent's due. Kids need school stuff. You can't just cut us off without warning. I just did, I said. His jaw clenched. So this is about the watch? That's what this is? It's about everything, I said. He laughed without humor. You've always thought you were better than me. I shook my head. No, I just stopped letting you use me. Before he could answer, I closed the door. He stood there another minute, then left without knocking again. That night, Rowan sat at the table doing homework. She looked up once and asked, Are Uncle Marcus and Aunt Sienna mad at us? They're mad at me. Not you, I said. She hesitated, then said, Caleb told some kids at school that we're broke now, that you can't pay for stuff anymore. I stopped what I was doing. When did he say that? Today at recess. She looked down at her paper. He said his mom told him you're selfish. I clenched my jaw but kept my voice even. Don't listen to him. She nodded but didn't look convinced. 2 days later, Marcus sent a picture of Caleb holding a piece of paper with SORRY written in blue crayon. He feels bad about the watch. Can we put this behind us? No mention of Sienna laughing. No mention of Caleb yelling in front of the whole patio. I didn't answer. By the weekend, Marcus sent another text. Landlord says rent's late. You know we can't cover this place without your help. You really gonna let your niece and nephew get kicked out? Still no apology. Just guilt. That same night, Sienna posted on Facebook. Some people love to act generous until times get tough. Then they show their true colors. But people started asking questions in the comments. Sienna ignored them. More missed calls? More be a family texts? More vague booking? I saved everything. Monday morning, Rowan didn't want to go to school. She said she had a stomachache, but she looked fine. I asked her what was really wrong, and after a little pushing, she said Caleb shoved her backpack off the bench at lunch and called her a crybaby when she told him to stop. I drove her anyway, but my hands were tight on the wheel the whole way. By lunchtime, I was getting texts from Marcus again. Marcus, why'd you tell Rowan to be rude to Caleb at school? He says she cursed at him. That's not okay. I ignored it. That evening, Rowan told me Caleb had kicked her soccer ball over the fence after school and laughed when she had to ask the teacher to get it. I sent one text to Marcus. Me. Tell your kid to leave Rowan alone. No answer. The next day, there was a long scratch down the side of my truck. Not a random ding, This went from the front headlight to the tailgate in one slow line. A few feet below it, someone had written the word JERK in the dust on my rear bumper. I stood there staring at it for a full minute before getting my phone out. I texted Marcus. Truck's scratched. Know anything about it? 5 minutes later, nope. Another text right after. Maybe don't blame us for everything going wrong in your life. That night, Rowan said she saw Caleb near the parking lot after school, laughing with two of his friends. I didn't say anything to her about the truck. No point. The next day, I called the restaurant for my birthday dinner, asked if they had cameras covering the patio. The manager said yes and offered to send me the footage once he got permission from the owner. When it came through, there it was on screen. Caleb grabbing my watch, yelling, throwing it over the railing. Sienna doubled over, laughing. Marcus sitting there like nothing happened. I saved the video. By Thursday, another text from Marcus. Marcus. Rent's late now. Landlord is calling. What are you doing? You know we can't afford this place without you. Not my problem. No response. That same night, Sienna posted on Facebook again. Family should be there when times get tough. Sad when they turn their back on kids. She turned off the comments after 3 people asked why she couldn't get a job. The next morning, Rowan told me Caleb called her garbage girl in front of the other kids. Said his mom told him I'm too cheap to pay for anything now. That was it. I drove to the school, asked to speak to the principal, told him what was going on, asked if Caleb could stay away from Rowan during school hours. The principal said they'd keep an eye on things. Not a formal no contact. Saturday morning, I walked outside and found the driver's side window of my truck cracked in a star shape, like someone had hit it with a key or rock. I called Mom, told her everything. The bullying, the scratches, the window, the video. She just sighed and said, maybe I should talk to Marcus before things got worse. Things are already worse, I said, and hung up. That afternoon, I called the non-emergency police line, gave them the video of the birthday dinner, photos of the truck, the cracked window, told them who I thought did it. The manager also hinted something else went missing that night. They said an officer would call me back after reviewing everything. 2 hours later, Marcus texted again. Marcus, Sienna says you're trying to ruin our lives. You've made your point. Enough is enough. I didn't answer, because this wasn't even close to enough. The officer called Monday afternoon, asked me to bring the video, photos, and everything I had. I drove down there after work. 2 officers watched the birthday footage twice on the small monitor. Property damage, harassment, possible child involvement, one officer said while scribbling in his notebook. We'll open a case. You believe the same people vandalized your truck? Yes, I said. Them or the kid they're letting run wild. He nodded. Anyone else have a reason? No, just them. Before I left, the second officer said, if there's more, threats, vandalism, anything, save it all. Messages, voicemails, video. The more you have, the cleaner the case. I nodded and walked out, holding the USB drive like it weighed 100 pounds. That evening, Marcus sent the first text. Marcus, Mom said you went to the cops. What the hell, Lucas? I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, Marcus, this is family business. You don't drag cops into it. I set the phone face down on the counter. More posts, more sideways swipes, more silence when people asked for facts. I screenshotted and moved on. Next day at noon, the officer called back. The restaurant had filed its own report. Turns out Caleb didn't just toss my watch. He walked out with a server's tablet after we left. The camera caught him shoving it under his hoodie. The officer said it looked practiced. Your brother returned it the next morning, the officer said. Claimed the kid found it outside. The police didn't buy it. Now there were 2 incidents linked to the same family. My truck and the tablet theft. That afternoon, Rowan told me Caleb shoved her again at recess. This time he knocked her notebook out of her hands. She said he laughed when the pages went flying in the dirt. I called Marcus right then. He didn't answer. I texted him instead. Keep your kid away from Rowan or I call the cops tonight. 10 minutes later, he texted back, he's just a kid. Don't overreact. Overreact? I drove straight to the school, walked into the front office and asked for the principal. Told him Caleb was harassing my daughter repeatedly, shoving her, mocking her, spreading garbage about me. I wanted it on record. The principal looked surprised but nodded, said they'd speak to Caleb and his parents. I said, do that. And if he lays a hand on her again, it won't be you dealing with it. Thursday morning, the officer called again. Said they were pulling Marcus and Sienna in for formal statements about the tablet and the vandalism. Asked if I wanted to press charges if the evidence lined up. Yes, I said. I hung up and started printing everything. Texts, screenshots, photos of the truck, stills from the video. That afternoon, Sienna texted me for the first time in days. Sienna, whatever the cops told you, this is ridiculous. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Just pay the rent until Marcus finds work, and we can all move on. I didn't answer. 20 minutes later, Sienna, you've always hated me. This is personal, isn't it? I shut my phone off. Friday morning, the officer called back again. The case was moving forward. Marcus and Sienna were scheduled to come in the following week for questioning. The combination of the restaurant footage, the tablet theft, my truck photos, Rowan being shoved, and Sienna's attempt to get pickup details meant the police were officially taking it seriously, including a possible custodial interference count. When I got home, Mom was standing on my porch. Maybe stop this before it gets worse, she said, as soon as I got out of the truck. Marcus says the kids are upset, says you're trying to ruin their lives. They shoved Rowan at school, I said. You tell me again who's ruining lives. She looked down at her shoes, didn't answer. Saturday night, Marcus left a voicemail. His voice wasn't shaking. It was tight with anger. You think you're better than me? Fine. But you drag cops into this, you'll regret it. I saved the voicemail. Then I sent it straight to the officer handling my case. Because this wasn't just about a watch anymore. Wasn't about rent or car payments, or even the truck. They went after my daughter, and that ended all discussion. For Monday, 8:12 a.m., the school front office called while I was tightening a belt on a customer's truck. Mr. Hale, did you phone us earlier about Rowan's schedule and pickup routine? No, I said. Why? We had a caller saying they were you. We didn't give anything out. We record those calls. Do you want the audio? Yes, email it. I washed the grease off, sat in the break room with my phone on speaker, and hit play. Fake friendly voice, soft, trying to sound helpful. The little breath at the end of sentences gave it away. It was Sienna. Whether she meant to snatch Rowan for a scare or just stalk our routine, I didn't care. I forwarded the file to the detective with one line, Voice is Sienna, impersonating me to get pickup times. He called 10 minutes later. Bring the recording in and file an addendum. We'll treat it as attempted impersonation with potential custodial interference. Also, I recommend you apply for a temporary restraining order. Today, I closed the shop an hour early, drove straight to the station, signed the supplemental report, handed over the audio and my notes. The detective printed out a list of steps for the TRO, circled the court address, and told me where to park. The courthouse clerk slid a packet across the counter. I filled in names, dates, the birthday video, the truck photos, Rowan being shoved, and now the phone call. The judge saw me same day. He read quietly, asked 3 questions, signed, and handed the packet to a deputy. Orders active upon service, the deputy said. No contact, no social media, no third-party messages. 200 feet from you, Rowan, your home, and her school. I drove to the school, gave the office a copy. The principal made 2 sets, one for the front desk, one for the counselor. He added a note to Rowan's file. Only Lucas Hale or the listed after-school program may pick her up. I added 2 backup names from the shop just in case, Darren and Shauna, people who actually answer their phones. At 5:41 p.m., the deputy called. Order served on Sienna Sorrell. She answered the door. Says she understands the terms. At 6:03 p.m., Marcus texted a photo of the paperwork in Sienna's hand. Marcus, you did this to my family. Me. She tried to get my daughter's schedule. Stay away from us. No reply. After dinner, I installed a new camera on the porch and another pointing at the driveway. Sticky night air, bugs tapping the light, screws biting into wood. I set alerts to people only, clipped the signs straighter, and tested the feed from my phone. Clear picture to the street. At 8:47 p.m., a gray SUV idled at the corner with parking lights on. It sat there 3 minutes, then rolled away. I zoomed, got most of the plate, wrote it down, sent it to the detective. He said he'd check it against their address. Tuesday drop-off, I clocked every car like a goalie. Half a block down, a silver sedan sat with the engine running. Woman in large sunglasses holding her phone up. I took a photo, called 911, gave the license and the restraining order number. 2 patrol cars rolled in quiet. By the time I looped back, the sedan had pulled forward to the crosswalk. An officer stood by her window with the other behind the car. Sienna. She didn't look at me. The officer checked her ID, wrote something on a clipboard, and pointed away from the campus. She turned the wheel hard and left without drama. The officer walked over. She's been warned, he said. We've documented it as a potential violation and a potential attempted custodial interference incident. If she shows again, call immediately. At lunch, the school called again. Someone new had tried to sign in as aunt. Wrong name, Wrong number. The front desk shut it down fast. They flagged Rowan's profile with a bright red banner and asked if I wanted a password on pickups. I gave them one. 4 random words. I printed it out and put it in my wallet. At 3:22 p.m., my camera caught a figure walking up my driveway in a hood and flat brim hat. He got within 5 feet of the truck, saw the lens move, and ducked back toward the street. I saved the clip, pulled a still, sent both to the detective with the timestamp. At 4:06 p.m., Marcus texted a photo of a paper taped to their door. Pay or quit in big letters. Marcus. Eviction notice. Kids are crying. This is on you. Me. It's on your choices. Marcus. You'll pay for this. Saved. At 5:30 p.m., I met the detective in the lobby. He'd pulled the gray SUV's plate from the night before, registered to Sienna's sister. He added the porch clip to my file, logged Marcus's text as a threat, and asked if I wanted to include him in the order. Not yet, I said. Document everything. He nodded. We are. For what it's worth, the restaurant footage got us a confession on the tablet. Found it turned into, took it and brought it back. That helps. On the way home, I bought motion lights, more screws, and a window sensor for Rowan's room. Took an hour to set it all up. I showed Rowan the app. If anything beeps at night, you get me first. Don't open the door. Don't look out the window. She nodded. Okay. At 7:12 p.m., my mom called. Sienna says you had her pulled over at the school. She violated a court order, I said. Mom went quiet. Marcus says they're losing their place. They had 2 years with my help. I'm done. I don't like any of this, she said. Me neither. At 9:18 p.m., someone rang my doorbell twice and then pounded like they owned the wood. The porch camera lit up Marcus's face plain as day. I hit record on my phone and opened the door just enough to block the hinge. Back up, I said. We need to talk, he said. His eyes were red, not from anything but from not sleeping or crying or both. You can't do this to us. You've been doing it to us for years, I said. You put your kid on mine. Your wife tried to get her schedule. You're done here. She was scared, he snapped. Cops? Court? Over what? A scratch and a joke? That joke was my father's watch, I said. The scratch was my truck. The shove was my child. Back. Up. He leaned on the frame like he might push. I held his stare. He blinked first. I didn't touch your girl, he said. Sienna told Caleb to, look, it got messy. We can fix this. You used to help. Those days are over. He dropped his hands from the frame, stepped off the mat, and pointed at the camera. You recording this? Yes. He laughed once, a dry little sound, and walked off the porch. I called non-emergency and gave them the time, the clip, and what he said. They logged it and told me to call 911 if he came back. At 10:26 p.m., the detective texted, Judge approved an extension hearing in 2 weeks. Keep logging everything. If she shows near the school again, that's a charge. I set the phone face down and listened to the new motion lights click off one by one. The house felt tight but steady. The app showed all green sensors. Porch camera idle, driveway clear. They wanted me scared. I wasn't. I was busy. The deputy's voicemail hit at 9:02 a.m. Statements for Marcus and Sienna set for Thursday. Impersonation audio logged. Keep your cameras on, he said. We're building the file. By noon, the landlord taped another notice on their door. Darren texted me a photo. 5 days to pay or vacate. At 1, the private school emailed about account compliance. Marcus rolled up at the shop at 2:30. I met him outside the bay so my guys could keep working. He had the pay or quit notice folded in his fist. You win, he said. Happy? Turn the engine off, I said. And back up. He clicked the key, stepped once. The letter shook. Eviction process starts next week. School locked our portal. They're pulling the kids until we catch up. Is that what you wanted? I wanted you to act right, I said. You could have warned me. Instead, you turned this into court dates and cops. You turned it when your kid ripped a watch off my wrist and your wife tried to get my daughter's schedule. He stepped closer. Darren stood in the doorway, phone ready. Marcus lowered his voice. Sienna's upset. She just wanted you to feel what it's like when someone takes something from you. Thanks for confirming, I said. Now hear me. Keep Sienna and Caleb away from Rowan. Stay off my porch. Don't call the school. Don't send cousins. Don't run messages through mom. Stop, or I add you to the order. He smirked. You don't have an order on me. Yet. He flicked the letter at my chest. I didn't take it. It bounced and fell. You'll throw family away over a watch and a late bill? That watch was Dad's. Those late bills were 2 years of my money. Pick up your paper. He left it. Tell your girl to stop telling teachers lies about Caleb. I took one step. Don't say her name again. Smile for the camera, Darren said. Marcus eyed the phone, then me. He took 2 slow steps back, turned, and got in the car. This ends when you stop, he said through the window. No, I said. It ends when you do. He drove off. At 4, the detective called. Quick update. Restaurant kid admitted the tablet. We're pulling Sienna's phone records on the impersonation and logging your porch clip with the SUV plate. For your truck, we're trying for prints near the gas cap. Keep saving everything. Pick up next morning. I parked in front of the office doors. Rowan came out with the counselor. The counselor read me the pickup password. We matched it. As we crossed, Marcus's car rolled past the crosswalk. He stared straight ahead. He circled the block but didn't stop. Back home, I saw a tear at the mail slot, like someone had pried it. Envelopes scattered on the rug instead of stacked. Nothing missing. I still photographed everything and slid the prints into the folder. At 7:38 p.m., camera pinged. A figure came down the sidewalk, hood up. He stopped at the curb, looked at the lens, and pulled the hood back. Marcus. He held his palms out like he was harmless. I opened the door with the chain on. Leave, I said. Sienna's court date is set, he said. They're saying impersonation, harassment, property stuff. We can't do this. The kids cry every night. Stop dragging them through it. You did this, he said. You and your pride. My pride didn't key my truck or shove a 6th grader. She's sorry about the call. She's sorry she got caught, I said. Plain ask then. Help with rent and tuition for 2 months. We move somewhere cheaper. I'll get day work. We get off your back. Clean slate. No, I said. I'm done. You really want me to leave with nothing? After everything I've done for you? You mean the years I paid your bills? He took 1 step up. The chain clicked. I put my hand on the frame. You've got 5 seconds, I said. Then I'm dialing. He didn't move. 5. Lucas. 4. You won't. 3. He stepped back. You're not family anymore. 2. He turned, hopped off the step, and walked to the sidewalk. He stopped, looked back and said, You'll regret this. Then he kept moving. I called non-emergency and logged it. The dispatcher said an officer would swing by. 10 minutes later, a cruiser rolled slow, spotlit the sidewalk, and the officer took a copy of the clip. He said they could issue a trespass warning next time. I emailed the clip to the detective too and printed a log for the folder. Dated it. After he left, the porch light buzzed, and the night went quiet again. The detective texted at 9:54 p.m. Lab pulled partial prints near your gas cap. We'll know more soon. Keep tight. I locked the door, checked the sensors, and watched the camera feed settle back to still. By the end of the week, the detective called before sunrise. Forensics said the partials from my truck's gas cap were consistent with Sienna. They'd verify once they had fresh prints. That was enough for probable cause. Between the impersonation call, the restaurant footage, the tablet admission, and destruction of property, the file was thick. A judge signed the warrant before close of business. At 9:14 a.m., a deputy knocked with the signed paperwork. Charges listed: criminal damage and attempted impersonation tied to a minor's school. The detective said they were reviewing custodial interference. He asked if I wanted to be informed when they picked her up. I said yes. By 11, a text from Darren at the shop. Cops just left Marcus's place. Took Sienna. Quiet. Kids stayed inside. Half an hour later, Marcus blew up my phone. 5 calls, 3 voicemails, all ignored. Then 1 text. You proud of yourself? I saved it. At 2, the school counselor called. Per the detective's notice to the district, the front office had been told about the arrest and would keep extra eyes on Rowan at dismissal in case anyone tried something stupid. I thanked her and drove to the school anyway. Sat where the cameras could see me, engine running. Marcus's car didn't show. Friday morning, the detective called again. Sienna booked and released with a court date next month. After booking, the lab confirmed the partial prints from my gas cap matched Sienna. Probable fines, maybe probation. He said charges against Marcus were under review for possible conspiracy if they could tie him to the vandalism or threats. He asked if I wanted a protective order added on Marcus now that Sienna's was active. Yes, I said. Same terms. They served me at work. Protective order, same as hers. Can't even come near you now. You happy? I didn't answer. Saturday, my mom called. She didn't ask how I was. She asked if it was true Marcus and Sienna had to be out by next week, that the school dropped the kids from the roster until tuition cleared. I told her I hadn't asked and didn't care. They're moving in with Sienna's sister, she said, like that meant anything to me. Sunday night, Marcus showed up one last time. Porch camera caught him pacing at the sidewalk, looking at the windows like he wasn't sure what he came to say. I stepped outside far enough the camera saw both of us. You win, he said finally. His voice was flat, like the fight leaked out of him. This wasn't about winning, I said. She's scared, Lucas. Court date, eviction, school calling about transfers. She says you wanted to ruin us. You ruined yourselves, I said. He shoved his hands in his hoodie pocket. We were family. You stopped acting like it the second you let your kid lay hands on mine. She told him to, he said quietly. She said make you feel small. You stayed and let it happen, I said. He didn't deny it. You've got the order now, I said. Next time you show up here, I call the cops before you hit the porch. His jaw shifted, but he didn't move closer. He just said, kids don't understand any of this. They'll figure it out, I said. They'll know who burned the bridge. He turned without another word, walked back to the sidewalk, and kept going until the camera lost him in the dark. Tuesday, the detective emailed me the case summary for my records. Restraining orders active. Court dates set. Evidence logged. Texts, videos, photos, voicemails, police reports, school statements. He said the DA was reviewing everything for potential stacking, including attempted custodial interference, since the impersonation involved a minor's information. That same afternoon, the school confirmed Rowan's pickup restrictions would stay locked until I asked otherwise. Password system active. Cameras at the gate flagged on my phone whenever a car idled too long. By Friday, Darren texted me a photo of Marcus and Sienna loading boxes into a U-Haul at their old place. No wave, no call, no message. Just leaving. Rowan and I ate takeout on the tailgate that night, motion lights clicking on and off behind us. She asked if we'd still see them at Grandma's for holidays. No, I said. Not for a long time. She didn't look surprised. Saturday morning, the detective called one last time. They'd added a violation of the protective order and attempted custodial interference to Sienna's charges based on the fake calls to the school and the pickup attempt after the order was served. Court would handle the rest. Anything else you want to report? He asked. No, I said. It's over now. The next week, I changed my number. Switched to paperless billing on everything. Password protected my mail forwarding, bank accounts, even the shop utilities. Clean break. One night, Rowan and I drove to the mountains. Phones off, music low, just the two of us. She asked if things would be quiet now. Yeah, I said. Finally. She leaned her head on the window and didn't say anything else. I didn't either, because there was nothing left to say. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 4. My nephew falsely accused me at age 15. Family cut me off immediately, and my wife ditched me. But 8 months later, he confessed he made it all up. Now they're begging for reconciliation. Not happening. The text hit my phone at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. My sister Lisa's name popped up on the screen, followed by a message that would basically detonate my entire existence like a controlled demolition gone wrong. Stay away from Tyler. We know what you did. Police are involved. Don't contact us again. I was sitting in my home office, still in my work clothes from the accounting firm where I'd spent the last 9 years building a solid career. Just wrapped up quarterly reports, had a glass of water next to my keyboard, was planning to catch up on some streaming before bed. Normal Tuesday night stuff. Then that text arrived and normal ceased to exist. I stared at those words until they blurred together. Read them again, then again, trying to make them mean something different than what they clearly meant. My brain was doing that thing where it tries to reject information that doesn't compute. Like when you hear about a death and your first thought is, no, that's not right. There must be a mistake. But there was no mistake. The words were crystal clear. My wife Michelle appeared in the doorway. She'd been watching something in the living room, came to check on me because I probably made some kind of sound. Her face shifted when she saw my expression. That immediate concern you see on someone when they know something's catastrophically wrong but don't know what yet. What's wrong? She asked, already moving closer. I handed her my phone without saying anything. Watched her read it. Watched her expression morph from confused to horrified in about 3 seconds flat. Her hand came up to cover her mouth. This can't be real, she said, but her voice was shaking. Tyler wouldn't lie about something like this. You would never... She stopped mid-sentence. Cut herself off like she just realized what she was about to say. That's when I saw it. The doubt. Just the smallest flicker behind her eyes. But it was there. Visible. Undeniable. She took a step back. Literally. Physically. Put distance between us where none had existed 5 seconds earlier. That step back told me everything I needed to know about what was coming. Yeah, right there. That's when I knew I was completely screwed. The next morning, I found out exactly what my 15-year-old nephew had told everyone. According to Tyler's version of reality, I'd made inappropriate advances during a family barbecue 3 weeks back. The details were specific enough to sound believable, vague enough to be impossible to disprove. He'd helped me carry stuff to my car from the backyard. Hot dog buns, sodas, that kind of thing. Normal family barbecue logistics. According to his story, I'd cornered him in the garage while we were putting things away, touched him inappropriately, said things that made him uncomfortable, crossed lines that should never be crossed. The whole thing was supposedly quick, maybe a minute or two. Then we'd gone back to the barbecue like nothing happened. He claimed he felt sick the rest of the day, but was too scared and confused to say anything. He said he'd been too terrified to tell anyone at first. Didn't know how. Didn't think anyone would believe him. The guilt and shame ate at him for 3 weeks until he finally broke down crying to his mom and everything came spilling out. My sister believed him instantly. No questions, no doubts, no request for more information. Just immediate, complete acceptance that her brother had violated her son. My parents believed him. They'd always doted on Tyler, their first grandkid, the golden child who could do no wrong. If Tyler said it happened, my brother Daniel believed him too. Daniel, who I'd literally helped put through college by lending him 15 grand when he was broke and desperate. Daniel, who I'd let crash on my couch for 3 months when he was between jobs. Daniel, who'd been in my wedding party and cried during his best man speech about how I was the best brother anyone could ask for. That Daniel looked at Tyler's accusation and decided I was guilty without a moment's hesitation. Within 48 hours, my entire family had picked sides, held a vote I didn't know was happening, reached a verdict without my testimony. Spoiler alert, it wasn't my side they picked. I tried calling Lisa first, figured she'd at least hear me out. We'd been close growing up, fought over stupid sibling stuff, but always had each other's backs when it mattered. Or so I thought. She blocked my number before the first ring even finished. Straight to that automated message about the person not accepting calls, didn't even give me a chance to say hello. So I drove to my parents' house. 20-minute drive that felt like hours. The whole way there, I was rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd explain. Surely they'd at least listen to me. These were the people who raised me, who knew me better than anyone. They'd see reason I was so stupidly optimistic about the whole thing. Like an idiot walking into an ambush, thinking everyone's there for a surprise party. My dad met me on the porch, before I even got to the door. He must have been watching through the window, saw my car pull up. He came outside and positioned himself at the top of the steps, like a bouncer at a club. His face had this look I'd never seen before. Complete disgust, mixed with disappointment so deep and profound, it seemed to physically age him right there. "Leave," he said. His voice was cold, flat. The voice you use with a stranger you want gone. "Dad, please, just listen to me for 5 minutes. None of this happened. I don't know why Tyler's saying these things, but I swear to you, don't." He cut me off. "Don't you dare call my grandson a liar." "I'm not calling him a liar. I'm just saying he's 15 years old. 15. Why would he make something like this up? What would he possibly gain from lying about something so serious?" "I don't know." My voice was getting louder. Desperate. "I don't know why he's saying it, but it didn't happen. I didn't do anything. You have to believe me. You've known me my entire life. You know I would never... I thought I knew you." His voice cracked on that word. Thought. Past tense. "I raised you better than this. Or at least I thought I did. I must have failed somewhere along the way because the son I raised wouldn't do something like this. Dad, if you come back here," he continued, talking over me, "I'll call the police myself, do you understand? You're not welcome in this house anymore. You're not welcome near any of us." I stood there on the walkway leading up to that porch, the same walkway where I'd learned to ride a bike at age 6, where we'd taken hundreds of family photos over the years, where I'd announced my engagement to Michelle while everyone cheered and hugged and celebrated. Now it was enemy territory, a border I wasn't allowed to cross. The door shut in my face. Not slammed. That would have implied emotion. This was controlled, deliberate, final. I stood there for probably 5 minutes, just staring at that closed door. Part of me kept expecting it to open again. Expected Dad to come back out and say he'd overreacted. "Let's talk this through." But the door stayed closed. The curtains stayed drawn. Eventually, I walked back to my car and drove home in complete silence. Didn't turn on the radio, didn't cry, didn't scream, just drove with this weird numbness spreading through my chest like frostbite. Michelle lasted 4 more days after that text from Lisa. 4 days of sleeping in separate rooms. 4 days of minimal conversation. 4 days of her looking at me like I was a stranger wearing her husband's face. 4 days of watching our 12-year marriage dissolve in real time, I came home from a meeting with a lawyer, had to find legal representation because this nightmare was getting official real quick, and found her suitcases packed by the front door. 2 large ones, the matching set we'd bought for our honeymoon to Greece, both stuffed full. Her car keys were in her hand. She was leaving. Not maybe leaving, not thinking about leaving. Actually, actively, definitely leaving. She couldn't even look at me when I walked in. Her eyes stayed fixed on a point somewhere over my left shoulder. "I need time," she said. Her voice was small, defeated. "I need to process this." Process what? I set my briefcase down. Tried to keep my voice calm even though my heart was jackhammering in my chest. "You know me, Michelle. You've known me for 12 years. We've been married for 9. You know I couldn't do something like this." "I thought I knew you." She was crying now, tears running down her face that she didn't bother wiping away. "But Mom brought up how you always volunteered at the youth center when we first started dating. How you seemed to really enjoy it when my nephew Tommy would visit us. How you were always offering to babysit for our friends with kids. And suddenly everything looks different. Everything has this new context that I can't unsee. Your mom." The betrayal hit harder than I expected. My mother-in-law had never particularly liked me. Thought Michelle could do better, marry someone with more money or better connections. But this was a new low. "She's been in your ear about this. She's concerned. My sister's concerned. Everyone is concerned. They're asking me how I didn't see signs, how I didn't notice anything off. And I keep telling them there were no signs because you wouldn't. But then I start questioning everything. Every memory, every interaction, every moment. And she trailed off. Looked at me for the first time since I'd walked in. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged, face blotchy from crying. "I can't be here right now," she continued. "I can't look at you without wondering if everything we built together is based on a lie. If the man I married is someone I never really knew, I need space to think clearly. To figure out what I believe, what you believe." I repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. "You should believe your husband, the person you've spent over a decade with, the person who's never given you a reason to doubt them. People said the same thing about Jerry Sandusky's wife." The comparison hit like a punch to the gut. About Larry Nassar's wife. About all those wives who claimed they never knew. Everyone always wonders how they missed it. I can't be that person. I can't be the wife who was too naive or too trusting to see what was right in front of her. "So you're just going to leave? Assume the worst and leave?" "I'm going to my sister's. I'll be in touch through my lawyer about next steps." "Your lawyer." The words tasted like ash. "You already called a lawyer." "I called her yesterday. I'm sorry, Jake. I'm so sorry. But I can't do this. I can't be here. I can't wake up next to you every morning not knowing if—" She didn't finish the sentence. Just grabbed her suitcases and walked out. I stood in our entryway, my entryway now, I guess, and listened to her car start up. Listened to it back out of the driveway. Listened to the engine noise fade as she drove away. The house felt different immediately, like all the air had been sucked out of it. Like the walls knew they were sheltering something toxic now, something that had to be contained and isolated. I walked through empty rooms that suddenly felt like a museum of my former life. The kitchen where we'd cook together every Sunday. The living room where we'd binge-watch shows and argued about whether to get a dog. The bedroom where we'd made plans for the future that would now never happen. Everything was still there. All the furniture, all the decorations, all the physical evidence of our life together, but it was all just stuff now. Props from a play that had closed without warning. I sat on the couch, our couch, the one we'd picked out together at 3 different furniture stores before Michelle finally found the perfect one, and waited for something to hit me. Grief, anger, despair, anything. But I just felt empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left nothing but shell. The police investigation was thorough, humiliating, and felt like being dissected while still alive. Detective Morris handled the case. Mid-50s, graying hair, eyes that had seen too much and believed too little. He ran the investigation with professional detachment, but I could see the judgment lurking underneath. In his world, in his experience, where there was smoke, there was usually fire. And Tyler's accusation was putting up a lot of smoke. I gave statements, multiple statements, went over the same events again and again from different angles. What happened at the barbecue? Where I was every minute, who I talked to, what Tyler and I discussed, how long we were alone in the garage, what exactly we carried to my car. I handed over my phone records, my computer, my work laptop, let them comb through everything: emails, texts, search history, downloaded apps, everything. I had nothing to hide because there was nothing to find. They talked to everyone who'd been at the barbecue, my aunt, my cousins, Daniel's wife, the neighbors who'd stopped by. Everyone gave the same basic account. Normal family gathering, nothing unusual, no tension, no weird interactions. I'd seemed fine. Tyler had seemed fine. Everything had been completely ordinary. Your nephew seems credible, Morris said during one of our interviews. We were in a gray room at the police station, recording equipment running, fluorescent lights making everything look washed out and depressing. He's consistent with his story, shows genuine distress when discussing the incident. His emotional responses match what we'd expect from someone who experienced trauma. Because he believes what he's saying, I replied. I'd said this same thing about 5 times already, but it didn't seem to land. But belief doesn't equal truth. He's convinced himself something happened. That doesn't make it real. Or maybe you're just good at compartmentalizing. Morris leaned back in his chair, studied me with those cop eyes that were trying to see through my skull into my thoughts. I've seen it before. People who seem completely normal, trustworthy, respected in their communities. Coaches, teachers, clergy, everyone vouches for them. Then we dig deeper and find out they've been hiding something dark for years. They're good at presenting one face to the world while doing something else entirely in private. Then dig deeper, I said. Dig as deep as you want. You won't find anything because there's nothing there. They dug. They interviewed my coworkers, talked to Michelle's family, contacted the youth center where I'd volunteered 6 years ago, pulled my background check, my financial records, looked for any red flags or patterns that might indicate guilt. They found nothing. Zero zilch. Nothing incriminating, nothing suspicious, nothing that supported Tyler's story in any way. No weird texts sent to anyone underage, no questionable browser history, no prior complaints or allegations, no unusual financial activity that might indicate payoffs or hush money. My life was an open book, and every single page was clean. I should have felt relieved, should have felt vindicated. But relief requires hope, and Hope had left the building around the same time Michelle loaded her suitcases into her car. After 6 weeks of investigation, the district attorney declined to press charges. Insufficient evidence, they called it, which is legal speak for we can't prove it happened, but we also can't prove it didn't. That conclusion satisfied exactly nobody. Tyler's family was furious that I wasn't being arrested. I was living in this nightmare limbo where I wasn't technically guilty, but also wasn't officially innocent. The absence of charges didn't mean I was cleared, it just meant they couldn't put me in prison. This doesn't mean you're innocent, Lisa wrote in the one and only email she sent me after the investigation closed. I'd checked my inbox obsessively for days, hoping for some kind of communication from someone in my family. This is what I got. It just means they couldn't prove it, the email continued. Tyler is dealing with trauma now because of you. He has nightmares. He's scared to be alone with adult men. You did this to him. The fact that the DA won't prosecute doesn't change what you did. I read that email probably 20 times, each time hoping it would say something different. Each time it said the same thing. My 15-year-old nephew had accused me of something I didn't do. My entire family believed him without question. The police investigated and found nothing. And somehow, I was still the villain in their story. There was no winning, no path forward that ended with my life returning to normal. The investigation not pressing charges wasn't an ending. It was just a different kind of hell. I tried to return to normal after the DA declined to press charges. Tried to convince myself that the worst was over, that I could rebuild from here. That was optimistic thinking of the highest order. Normal was gone. Normal had packed its bags and left with Michelle. At work, the whispers followed me like a bad smell. People would stop talking when I walked into the break room. Conversations would die mid-sentence when I approached. I'd catch people looking at me, then quickly looking away when our eyes met. My boss, Richard, called me into his office 2 weeks after the investigation closed. He didn't waste time with small talk. Jake, we need to discuss optics. Optics. Not, how are you holding up? Or, we're glad this is over. Optics. The firm prides itself on its reputation, he continued, straightening papers on his desk that didn't need straightening. Avoiding eye contact, we have to consider how certain situations might reflect on us as an organization. I wasn't charged with anything, I said. The investigation found nothing. I understand that legally, we're aware of your rights. We're not terminating your employment, but we do need to make some adjustments. For everyone's comfort. The adjustments started small. A project I'd been leading for 6 months got reassigned to another senior accountant. No explanation, just a brief email saying the team structure was being reorganized. Then another project disappeared from my desk. Then another. Meeting invitations stopped arriving. The weekly status meetings I'd been part of for years suddenly happened without me. When I asked about it, I was told they were trying to streamline attendance, reduce unnecessary participants. My desk might as well have had a quarantine sign on it. Client-facing work vanished entirely. Apparently, nobody wanted me representing the firm to outside contacts. Can't have someone accused of inappropriate contact with a minor handling important client relationships. Even if those accusations went nowhere, I went from being a valued senior member of the team to being invisible. A ghost haunting my own career, watching other people do the work I used to do. Brian, a colleague I'd worked with for 5 years, was the only one who still talked to me. But even those interactions were careful, professional. He'd ask about work projects in the hallway, but never invited me to lunch anymore. Never suggested grabbing a drink after work. Kept his distance while maintaining basic human decency. I appreciated it, even though it hurt. At least he was treating me like a person instead of a contagion. The rest of my friends evaporated like morning fog. David, my college roommate, my best man at my wedding, stopped returning calls. I'd text him, get nothing back. Call his phone, straight to voicemail. Finally, I saw him post on social media about a weekend trip with mutual friends from college. A trip I wasn't invited to. A trip nobody mentioned to me, message received. Melissa had been in our wedding party, Michelle's college friend, who'd become our friend. She unfriended me on every social media platform the same day, blocked my number. Completely erased me from her digital existence. The neighborhood book club I'd attended for 5 years suddenly disbanded. Got an email from Donna, who hosted it at her house, saying that due to scheduling conflicts, they were putting things on hold indefinitely. 2 weeks later, I saw half the book club members going into Donna's house carrying books and wine. They hadn't disbanded. They'd just disbanded me. People crossed the street to avoid walking past me. Actual adults, functioning members of society, would see me coming and suddenly find the other sidewalk very interesting. Like whatever I had might be contagious through brief proximity. I was toxic, a liability, someone to be avoided unless you wanted guilt by association. The guy at the coffee shop where I'd been a regular for 3 years stopped making small talk. Just took my order, made my drink, handed it over in silence. No more, how's your week going? Or comments about the weather. Just transactions. My dry cleaner, a friendly older woman who always asked about Michelle, stopped asking questions, stopped chatting, just checked in my clothes, gave me a ticket, told me when to pick them up. Even the checker at my grocery store, who'd seen me weekly for years, suddenly couldn't maintain eye contact. Small town. Word travels fast. Everyone knew, or thought they knew, and what they thought they knew was enough to make me untouchable. I'd gone from having a full life, family gatherings, dinner parties, weekend plans, a calendar full of social obligations, to having nothing. No family, no wife, no friends, no social circle, just work that didn't want me, and an empty house that echoed with Michelle's absence. The loneliness was crushing, physical almost, like a weight pressing down on my chest that never lifted. I joined a gym on the other side of town where nobody recognized me. Went at weird hours when it was mostly empty, bought my groceries at 6 a.m. on Sunday mornings when the store was a ghost town. Started paying for everything with my card instead of cash so I could use self-checkout and avoid human interaction. I became an expert at being invisible, at moving through the world without drawing attention, at existing in the spaces between other people's lives. Michelle filed for divorce 3 months after she moved out. The papers came via a process server who showed up at my door on a Saturday morning. Nothing says your marriage is over, quite like a stranger handing you a manila envelope and asking you to sign for your own dissolution. Her lawyer was efficient and cold, clearly expensive, clearly experienced at dismantling lives with maximum efficiency and minimum empathy. The demands were straightforward. She wanted the house, half of all assets, half my retirement accounts, a clean break. My lawyer asked if I wanted to fight it, said we could contest the division of assets, argue for a different arrangement. But what was the point? Michelle had already decided who I was. She'd chosen to believe I was capable of hurting a child. No amount of legal wrangling would change that fundamental verdict. I signed everything. Let her have the house we'd picked out together, the furniture we'd chosen, the life we'd built. It was all contaminated now anyway, tainted by accusation and abandonment. Better to let it all go and start over with nothing than try to hold on to remnants of something that was already dead. The divorce was final within 6 months. Irreconcilable differences, the paperwork said. That was one way to put it. Another way would be, wife believed husband was a predator based on teenager's word alone and couldn't live with the uncertainty. But irreconcilable differences sounded more professional. The nights were brutal after she left. Worse than the days, even with all the social isolation and professional exile. I'd lie awake in my half-empty house, staring at the ceiling, replaying that barbecue in my head over and over like a movie stuck on repeat, trying to understand what had happened, what Tyler had seen or misinterpreted, or just flat out invented for reasons I couldn't fathom. We'd barely even interacted that day. Lisa had asked if someone could help bring stuff from her car. She'd parked on the street because our driveway was full. Tyler volunteered. I said I'd help too, since I was heading to my car anyway to grab my phone. We walked together, made small talk about school, about the baseball team he was on, about normal 15-year-old kid stuff. Got to my car, loaded up with bags of hot dog buns and a case of sodas, walked into the garage, set everything on the chest freezer we had there. Tyler asked where I wanted them. I said, just leave them there. I'd move them inside in a minute. He said, okay. We walked back to the party. The entire exchange took maybe 3 minutes. 4 at most. Nothing happened. Nothing weird. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing even remotely questionable. We carried groceries and talked about high school baseball. 3 minutes that somehow destroyed my entire life. I cycled through anger, depression, disbelief. Some days I wanted to fight, to hire investigators, to drag the truth into the light through sheer force of will. Other days I wanted to vanish entirely, move to another state, change my name, start over somewhere nobody knew my face or my history. But underneath everything was this harder, colder truth that I couldn't escape. I couldn't prove a negative. I couldn't prove something hadn't happened. The absence of evidence wasn't evidence of absence in most people's minds. I was guilty by accusation alone. Convicted in the court of public opinion with no appeal process, no chance for retrial, no path back to innocence. 6 months after the accusation, I sold the house, couldn't afford it on one income anyway, and couldn't stand the memories embedded in every room. The kitchen where Michelle and I had cooked together, the bedroom where we'd planned our future, the office where I'd gotten that first text from Lisa. I moved to a small apartment across town. 1 bedroom, basic kitchen, functional bathroom. Nothing fancy, nothing that required an emotional attachment. Just a place to exist. I took a job at a smaller accounting firm that didn't know my history, wasn't even in the same business park as my old office. I showed up, did the work, collected a paycheck, and left. Nobody knew me. Nobody asked questions. It was perfect. I cut off all contact with everyone who'd abandoned me, blocked phone numbers, deleted social media entirely, created as much distance as possible. If they could believe the worst of me that easily, without evidence or even reasonable doubt, they didn't deserve space in my life. Not then. Not ever. The loneliness was crushing. I'd gone from a full life, family gatherings, dinner parties, weekend plans, to a solitary existence measured in silence and routine. Work, home, sleep, repeat. I joined a gym on the other side of town where nobody recognized me, bought groceries during off-peak hours, became an expert at avoiding eye contact. 8 months after the accusation, everything changed. Daniel called, which was weird because we hadn't spoken since he'd sent me a 2-sentence text calling me a disgrace to the family. Tyler admitted he made it up, he said, without preamble. I was in my apartment, eating reheated takeout in front of my laptop. I actually laughed, not a happy laugh. A hollow, disbelieving sound that surprised even me. Say that again. He confessed. Broke down crying to Lisa and Dad. Said he made the whole thing up. He was angry about something stupid, wanted attention. I don't know. He's a mess now. Feels terrible about what he did. I sat there in silence, waiting for something. Relief, vindication, rage to surface. Nothing came. Just a strange numbness. Jake, you there? Yeah, I'm here. We were wrong. We're all so sorry. We want you to come to dinner this weekend. Mom's cooking your favorite. We can talk. Figure out how to move forward as a family. No. What? I said no, I'm not coming to dinner. I'm not moving forward. I'm not doing any of this. Jake, he was 15. He made a stupid mistake, but he's owned up to it now. We all want to make this right. There's no making this right. You don't get to destroy someone's life and then fix it with pot roast and apologies. What do you want us to do? We admitted we were wrong. Tyler's devastated by what he did. Dad cries every time your name comes up. Mom hasn't been the same since we found out the truth. Good, I said. The word came out flat and cold. They should feel terrible. They should cry. They should lose sleep over what they did to me. But their feelings aren't my problem anymore. You're being unreasonable. I'm being reasonable for the first time in my life. You all made your choice 8 months ago. You chose to believe a 15-year-old story without a single shred of evidence. Without even asking for my side, I'm just living with the consequences of your choice. He's family. So was I. Past tense. You made that very clear when Dad slammed the door in my face. I hung up, blocked his number. Felt nothing. Lisa tried next. Showed up at my apartment building. Buzzed my unit about 50 times until I finally answered the intercom just to make her stop. Jake, please, let me come up. We need to talk. We don't need to do anything. Go home, Lisa. Tyler wants to apologize to you in person. He needs closure. I actually laughed at that. He needs closure. That's rich. Tell Tyler he can write his apology in a journal and never show it to anyone. I don't want to see him, hear from him, or think about him ever again. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. He destroyed my life because he wanted attention. He gets to live with that. So do you. I believe my son when he said something terrible happened to him. What was I supposed to do? Ask questions. Look for evidence. Trust the person you'd known for 37 years instead of immediately assuming the worst. But you didn't. You chose. And now you get to live with that choice forever. I'm your sister. No, I said. You were my sister. That person doesn't exist anymore. Now leave before I call building security. She left. I watched from my window as she sat in her car for 20 minutes, crying. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, not sadness, just emptiness where those emotions used to live. My parents tried a different approach. They sent a letter handwritten, both of their signatures at the bottom, full of apologies and regrets and explanations about how they'd been protecting their grandson. I read it once. Then I shredded it. Michelle heard through the grapevine about Tyler's confession. She called from a number I didn't recognize, so I actually picked up. Jake, I heard about Tyler. I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. Yes, you should have. Can we talk? Maybe meet for coffee? Why would we do that? Because I made a mistake. I let other people influence me instead of trusting my husband. I want to make it right. The divorce is final, Michelle. There's no making anything right. We're done. I still love you. You loved who you thought I was. When things got hard, when it mattered most, you bailed. You picked your mom's paranoia over 12 years of marriage. That's not love. That's convenience that evaporated under pressure. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. I learned that when my wife packed her bags and left, because she couldn't look at me without wondering if I was a predator. You made your choice. Live with it. I hung up. Blocked that number too. Over the next few months, they all tried different tactics. Emails, letters, showing up at my workplace. My mom left voicemails crying about how she'd lost her son and couldn't bear it. Daniel tried the guilt trip angle about how I was tearing the family apart by being stubborn. I ignored all of it, changed my number, moved to a different apartment in a different part of town, put up walls so high nobody could climb them. A year after Tyler's confession, I met Hannah at a work conference. She was a financial analyst from Seattle, sharp and funny and refreshingly direct. We got coffee, then dinner, then started a long-distance thing that eventually became her moving to my city. I told her everything on our third date. Figured she deserved to know what she was getting into. She listened to the whole story, then said, "So your family abandoned you based on a lie? Destroyed your life? And now they're mad you won't forgive them?" Basically, yeah. Well, they can stay mad. You don't owe them forgiveness. That's when I knew she was different. She didn't try to fix me or convince me to reconcile. She just accepted that some things are too broken to repair. We built a life together. Small, quiet, carefully constructed. She met my colleague Brian and the two other people I'd cautiously let into my orbit. She never pushed me to expand my circle or reach out to my family. She understood that the life I had now was intentionally limited, and she was okay with that. 2 years after Tyler's confession, my dad had a heart attack. Sudden and final. Daniel tracked me down through my employer. Called my work number. "Dad's gone," he said. No small talk, no build-up. "Funeral's Saturday. Mom's asking if you'll come." I thought about it for maybe 5 seconds. "No, Jake, he's our father." He was. He was also the man who shut the door in my face and called me disgusting. That was our last real interaction. I'm good not adding a funeral to the collection. He regretted how he treated you. Talked about it constantly in his last years. Good. He should have regretted it. But regret doesn't obligate me to show up and make everyone feel better about his death. This isn't about him, it's about Mom. She's devastated. Seeing you would help. Then she should have thought about that 8 years ago, when she believed the worst about me immediately. I'm sorry Dad's dead. I'm sorry Mom's hurting. But I'm not responsible for comforting people who destroyed me. There was a long silence on the other end. "You've become hard," Daniel finally said. "I've become honest. There's a difference. I didn't go to the funeral. Didn't send flowers. Didn't send a card. Let my absence speak for itself. The family could interpret it however they wanted. I was done managing their feelings about my boundaries." Hannah asked if I felt guilty about skipping it. "No," I said. Should I? Most people would. He was your father. Most people's fathers don't disown them over a teenager's lie. I'm not most people. She kissed my forehead. No, you're definitely not. 10 years after the accusation, I ran into Lisa at an airport. We were both traveling for work, ended up at the same gate. She saw me first. Her face went through rapid-fire emotions: surprise, hope, pain, resignation. She approached cautiously. Jake. Hi, Lisa. We stood there awkwardly. A decade of silence between us, heavy as concrete. You look good, she ventured. So do you. Tyler's in college now, doing well, studying psychology, wants to work with troubled teens. That's appropriate, I said. My tone was flat. She flinched. He's not the same person he was at 15. Neither am I. He still asks about you. Wonders if you've forgiven him. Tell him I haven't. Will you ever? I considered the question honestly. Maybe someday I'll reach a place where forgiveness feels possible, but it won't change anything between us. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. What would it take for reconciliation? Nothing. There's nothing anyone could do or say that would rebuild what was broken. You can't unring a bell. Can't undo what I learned about all of you. We were wrong. We've acknowledged that. We've apologized. What else can we do? Nothing. That's what I keep trying to tell you. This isn't a problem you can solve. It's a consequence you have to live with. Our flight started boarding. She hesitated. I miss you, she said. I miss my brother. Your brother died when you believed Tyler without question. I'm someone else now. That person didn't survive what you all did to him. I'm who came after. And I don't have the capacity to be your brother anymore. That's cruel. It's true. I boarded first, left her standing at the gate, didn't look back. Hannah asked about the encounter when I got home. I told her the truth. I felt nothing. No regret, no relief, no sadness. Just acknowledgement of running into someone from my past. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Story 5. On my 18th birthday, my parents told me they spent 95% of my trust fund on my sister's weddings. Hope you understand. So I sued them and destroyed everything they built. Hey, Reddit. My parents stole my future to fund my sister's fantasy weddings. When I found out, I didn't cry or beg. I built a case that destroyed their retirement, their house, and their precious reputation. They thought family meant I'd forgive them. They were wrong. Let me start from the beginning so you understand exactly how calculated this betrayal was. I'm Finn, 18 male. Got 2 older sisters, Victoria, 26 female, and Ashley, 24 female. Both of them are what you'd call high maintenance with a capital H. Think designer bags, expensive brunches, Instagram influencer wannabes who work part-time at boutiques while living off whoever's willing to fund their lifestyle. My parents, Robert and Linda, are what I'd call upper-middle-class wannabes. Dad's a regional sales manager for a medical supply company, pulls in about $120,000. Mom works part-time at a real estate office, maybe another $40,000. They live in this cookie-cutter suburb where everyone pretends to have more money than they actually do. You know the type. Leased luxury cars in every driveway, houses mortgaged to the ceiling, credit cards maxed out to maintain appearances. Growing up, the family dynamic was pretty straightforward. My sisters were the princesses who got everything, and I was the responsible one who was expected to figure things out on my own. Not because I was a boy or anything profound like that, just because I didn't demand attention the way they did. Victoria was the dramatic one. Every life event became a production that required the entire family's participation and financial support. Her high school graduation? Mom and Dad threw a party that cost more than most people's weddings. Her college graduation? Same thing, except bigger. When she got her real estate license after 3 tries, they celebrated like she'd passed the bar exam. Ashley was worse in some ways because she was sneaky about her manipulation. She'd cry at exactly the right moments, play the victim when things didn't go her way, and had this talent for making you feel guilty if you didn't give her what she wanted. Where Victoria demanded things loudly, Ashley extracted them through emotional warfare. Me? I learned early that the best strategy was staying under the radar. Did well in school without making a big deal about it, worked part-time jobs starting at 15, mowing lawns, then bussing tables at a local diner, eventually landing a gig at an auto parts store where I actually learned useful skills. Saved every dollar I could because I'd watched my sisters blow through money like it grew on trees. By the time I hit 17, I had about $12,000 saved up from 3 years of work. Not bad for a high school kid. I was planning to use it for college expenses, maybe trade school if I decided to go that route. My grades were solid. Not valedictorian material, but good enough for state schools with some scholarship potential. The thing is, I'd always known about my trust fund. My grandpa, Dad's father, had set it up when I was born. He'd been a mechanical engineer, worked for Boeing for 30 years, retired with a solid pension and good investments. When he passed away when I was 7, he left trust funds for all 3 of his grandkids, equal amounts managed by my parents until we turned 18. Nobody ever told me the exact amount, but I'd overheard conversations over the years that suggested it was substantial. Enough for a solid 4-year degree at a decent school, maybe with some left over. I did the math in my head. If it was set up in the late 90s and had been growing for 18 years, even a modest initial investment would be worth something significant by now. My plan was simple. Graduate high school, work for a year to build up additional savings, then use the trust fund for a mechanical engineering degree at state. Follow in Grandpa's footsteps. Maybe learn a trade first, HVAC or electrical work, so I'd have practical skills and a fallback income source while studying. I had spreadsheets. Actual spreadsheets on my laptop breaking down costs, potential scholarships, work study options. I'd researched which programs had the best job placement rates, which schools offered co-op programs with paid internships. This wasn't some vague dream. It was a detailed plan built on the assumption that the trust fund would cover tuition and living expenses. The only variable I couldn't control was the exact trust fund amount. But every time I'd asked about it, Mom and Dad would give me these vague reassurances about having plenty for college and nothing to worry about. I should have pushed harder, should have demanded exact numbers, but I trusted them. Stupid, right? My 18th birthday fell on a Saturday in June, about 2 weeks after high school graduation. No big party planned. That wasn't really my style, and honestly, after watching my sister's elaborate celebrations over the years, I preferred something low-key. Figured we'd do dinner at home, maybe go out for dessert, and then I'd finally get the trust fund details so I could start making concrete college plans. Instead, I got the conversation that changed everything. We were sitting in the dining room after dinner. Mom had made my favorite, lasagna with garlic bread, which should have been my first warning sign. She only cooked elaborate meals when she was trying to soften bad news, but I was too focused on the trust fund conversation to notice the pattern. So, I said, pulling out my laptop, I've been doing research on college programs. Wanted to go over some options with you guys and figure out the budget based on the trust fund amount. The silence that followed lasted maybe 3 seconds, but felt like 3 years. Dad cleared his throat. Mom suddenly became very interested in her water glass. That's when my stomach dropped. About that, Dad said slowly. We need to talk about your expectations regarding Grandpa's trust fund. Expectations, not plans. Expectations. Okay, I replied carefully. What about it? Mom jumped in with this fake cheerful voice that made my skin crawl. Well, sweetie, you know your sisters both got married in the last few years. Beautiful weddings. Victoria's was at that gorgeous vineyard, and Ashley's was at the country club. Those were really important family milestones. I stared at her. What does that have to do with my trust fund? Dad took over. Those weddings were expensive. Very expensive. And as parents, we wanted to give your sisters the best possible start to their marriages. Family is about supporting each other during important life events. My hands went cold. How expensive? Victoria's wedding cost about $85,000, Mom said, like she was discussing grocery bills. Ashley's was around $78,000. Plus, we helped them both with down payments on their condos. That was another $40,000 combined. I did the math instantly. $203,000 on weddings and condos for my sisters. And you paid for this how? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. We had to make some difficult financial decisions, Dad said in his corporate voice. The trust funds were available resources, and we determined the best use of those resources was supporting your sisters during critical life transitions. You spent my trust fund on their weddings. Not just yours, Mom added quickly, like that made it better. We used portions of all 3 trust funds. It was fair. Everyone contributed to these important family events. Fair. They'd stolen from all 3 of us, but somehow that made it fair. How much is left? My voice sounded weird in my own ears. Flat. Distant. Dad pulled out a folder. He'd actually prepared paperwork for this conversation. Handed me a statement showing the current trust fund balance. $8,472, out of what should have been around $180,000, based on what I'd overheard over the years. There was less than $9,000 remaining. They'd burned through 95% of my inheritance to fund my sister's Instagram-worthy weddings and starter condos. I know this isn't what you were expecting, Mom said gently, but family means making sacrifices for each other. Your sisters needed help at important times in their lives. When you get married someday, I'm sure they'll return the favor. When I get married. Like that was even remotely the same thing as needing money for education that would determine my entire career trajectory. Did they know? I asked. Victoria and Ashley, did they know you were spending my trust fund on their weddings? The pause told me everything. They knew it was family money, Dad said carefully. That's not what I asked. Did they specifically know you were taking it from my trust fund that Grandpa set up for my education? Mom's face did this thing where she tried to look sympathetic, but just looked guilty. They might have been aware that we were reallocating some resources. They knew. My sisters knew they were spending my future on their wedding flowers and photographer packages and whatever else goes into an $85,000 wedding. And they didn't care. I closed my laptop very carefully, stood up, walked to my room, closed the door, and started planning. Not revenge, that's too emotional. Planning, like an engineering problem. Identify the issue, gather data, determine solutions, execute with precision. First step was information. I needed to know exactly what had been done, when, and whether it was legal. The trust fund was set up by my grandfather with specific terms. Those terms had to be documented somewhere. Spent that night on my laptop researching trust law. Turns out, when someone sets up a trust fund for a minor with specific purposes, like education, the trustees, my parents, have legal obligations. They're called fiduciary duties. They can't just spend trust assets on whatever they feel like, even if they're the trustees. More importantly, if the trust specified it was for my education and they used it for my sister's weddings, that's called breach of fiduciary duty. It's not just wrong, it's legally actionable. I needed documentation. The original trust documents, bank statements showing when money was withdrawn and where it went, anything proving they'd violated the trust terms. Sunday morning, while my parents were at church, because apparently people who steal from their own kids' education funds still think they're good Christians, I went into Dad's home office. He kept everything organized in filing cabinets, color-coded folders, alphabetical system, the works. Dad was meticulous about paperwork, which was about to become his biggest mistake. Found the trust documents in a folder labeled Estate Robert Sr. That was Grandpa. The trust had been established in 1998 with an initial deposit of $50,000 per grandchild. Investment accounts, moderate risk, managed by a financial advisor until each grandchild turned 18. The terms were crystal clear. Funds to be used exclusively for post-secondary education expenses, including but not limited to tuition, fees, books, and reasonable living expenses while enrolled in an accredited educational institution. Exclusively for education, not weddings, not condo down payments. Education. I took photos of every page with my phone. Then I found the bank statements for the trust account. My parents had been trustees with full access. Starting 3 years ago, there were massive withdrawals coinciding exactly with Victoria's wedding planning. Then 2 years ago, more huge withdrawals for Ashley's wedding. Documented everything. Dates, amounts, patterns. Built a timeline showing exactly when each withdrawal happened and cross-referencing it with my sister's wedding dates and social media posts about their condo purchases. Then I looked at my sister's trust accounts. Same pattern. They'd drained Victoria's and Ashley's funds too, then given them the money back as wedding gifts and down payment assistance. Classic money laundering through family accounts to hide what they were doing. But here's the thing. My sisters were adults when their funds were accessed. They could have objected, filed complaints, stopped the transfers. They didn't. They cooperated. That made them complicit. I had everything I needed. Clear terms stating the money was for education. Clear evidence it was spent on weddings. Clear documentation of when and how much. My parents had handed me a complete case because they were so confident I'd never challenge them. Monday morning, I called 5 law firms specializing in trust litigation. Got consultations scheduled for that week. Used some of my saved money to pay for initial meetings. The first lawyer I met with was this guy named Patterson. About 50, sharp suit, office downtown with law degrees from schools I couldn't afford. I laid out everything. The trust documents, the withdrawals, the timeline. He looked at the evidence for maybe 10 minutes, then leaned back in his chair and said 3 beautiful words. This is actionable. Actionable how? I asked. Your parents breached their fiduciary duty as trustees. The trust explicitly states funds are for education. They used it for weddings. That's textbook breach. You can sue for the full amount that should have been in your trust, plus damages. How much are we talking? He pulled out a calculator. Original deposit of $50,000 in 1998. Conservatively invested over 18 years at even a modest 6% annual return. That's approximately $142,000. They left you $8,400. So roughly $134,000 in damages, plus potential punitive damages if we can prove knowing violation of trust terms. I sat there absorbing that number. $134,000. That's what they'd stolen. What about my sisters? I asked. They benefited directly from this. Can they be held liable? Patterson thought about it. Potentially. If we can prove they knew the source of the funds and knew it violated trust terms, they could be named as defendants or ordered to return the benefits. That gets complicated, though. I want them included, I said. They knew. They have to have known. That will make this ugly, he warned. Family lawsuits always are, but going after siblings too? That's scorched earth. Good, I replied. That's exactly what I want. We spent another hour going over strategy. Patterson explained the process. File the lawsuit, serve my parents and potentially my sisters. Discovery phase where we'd compel them to produce all financial records. Depositions where they'd have to answer questions under oath, and eventually trial if they didn't settle. Most of these cases settle, he said. Once the other side sees the evidence and realizes they're going to lose, they typically want to avoid the courtroom, especially in family matters where reputation is at stake. And if they don't settle, then we go to trial, and I'm confident we'll win. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is whether your parents want to risk a public trial where all of this becomes court record. I hired him on the spot, paid a $5,000 retainer from my savings, worth every penny. Patterson moved fast. Within 2 weeks, he'd drafted the complaint and had my parents and sisters served with papers. The lawsuit named my parents as primary defendants for breach of fiduciary duty, and my sisters as secondary defendants for unjust enrichment. My sisters were included because they'd directly benefited from the trust fund money. Even if they weren't trustees, they'd received funds they knew weren't legally theirs. That made them liable to return those benefits. The moment they got served was apparently spectacular, according to Patterson, who heard it secondhand from the process server. Dad answered the door, saw the papers, and actually yelled, "Are you kidding me?" loud enough that neighbors looked out their windows. I wasn't home when they got served, had strategically chosen to be at work, figured that was safer than being present when they realized their youngest kid was suing them and his sisters for $134,000 plus damages. My phone started exploding around 3 p.m. Missed calls from Mom, Dad, Victoria, Ashley. Text messages ranging from angry to bewildered to outright hostile. Dad, we need to talk about this immediately. What you're doing is destroying this family. Mom, please call us. We can work this out. You don't need lawyers. We're your parents. Victoria, are you serious right now? You're suing me because Mom and Dad helped with my wedding? What is wrong with you? Ashley, I can't believe you're this selfish. This is going to ruin everything. Hope you're happy. I didn't respond to any of them. Patterson had been clear. Don't engage directly. All communication goes through attorneys now. Anything I said could be used in the lawsuit. Instead, I forwarded all the messages to Patterson. He seemed pleased. Good. They're panicking. Means they know they screwed up. The next few weeks were a masterclass in watching people realize they'd made a catastrophic mistake. My parents hired a lawyer, some guy Dad knew through his work contacts. Not a trust litigation specialist, just a general practice attorney who was in way over his head. Their initial response to the lawsuit was basically, Finn is being unreasonable and vindictive. This is a family matter that should be resolved privately. The trust funds were used appropriately for family support. Patterson tore that apart in his counter-response, cited specific trust law, precedent cases, and pointed out that family support wasn't mentioned anywhere in the trust terms. The only allowable use was education. Weddings weren't education. Condo down payments weren't education. This wasn't ambiguous. Then came discovery, the phase where both sides have to hand over relevant documents. Patterson requested everything. All bank statements for the trust accounts, financial records showing where the money went, communications between my parents and sisters about using trust funds, everything. My parents tried to fight the discovery requests, claimed they were too broad, too invasive, violated privacy. The judge wasn't impressed, ordered them to produce everything within 30 days or face sanctions. That's when things started getting really interesting. Turns out my sisters had saved text message chains about the trust fund money. Victoria had texted Mom 2 months before her wedding, "Talk to the venue. They need the final payment next week. Can you access Finn's trust fund for it? He's only 15, he won't even know." Ashley had similar messages. "The condo down payment is $20,000. Can we use some of Finn's fund? I'll pay him back eventually, promise." Eventually. Right. These messages were time-stamped, dated, and showed clear knowledge that they were spending my money. Not just family money, my money specifically. And they didn't care because I was younger, wouldn't know, and probably wouldn't fight back. Patterson was thrilled when these came out in Discovery. This is perfect. Proves knowledge, proves intent, proves they specifically knew they were depleting your trust fund. Your sisters just handed us their case. The depositions were scheduled for October. My parents had to sit in a conference room with Patterson and a court reporter and answer questions under oath. Lying would be perjury, so they had to tell the truth or risk criminal charges. I got to read the transcripts afterward. Dad spent 3 hours trying to justify his decisions, claiming he'd planned to replenish the trust fund before I turned 18, but unexpected expenses came up. When Patterson asked what expenses, Dad couldn't provide specifics. Just vague references to market conditions and cash flow issues. Mom's deposition was worse. She cried through most of it, kept saying I was destroying the family over money, and that she thought I'd understand when I was older. Patterson pressed her on whether she understood the trust terms specified education only. She admitted she did. Then he asked why she violated those terms. She said she didn't think Finn would mind helping his sisters. Didn't think I'd mind. She spent $134,000 of my education fund and didn't think I'd mind. My sister's depositions were gold. Victoria tried playing victim, claiming she didn't really know where the money came from and thought it was just my parents being generous. Then Patterson showed her the text messages where she specifically asked them to use my trust fund. She went pale and stopped talking except to say, "I don't recall," to every question after that. Ashley went the opposite route, defiant and entitled. Said the money was family assets and everyone should contribute to important events like weddings. When Patterson pointed out the legal terms of the trust, she said those terms were outdated and Grandpa would have wanted the family to support each other. Patterson asked if she had any evidence Grandpa wanted his education trust fund used for weddings. She didn't. Asked if she'd ever considered paying back the money she knew came from my trust. She said she'd intended to, eventually. Eventually. That word again. By December, my parents' lawyer was pushing hard for settlement talks. They couldn't win at trial. The evidence was overwhelming. The trust terms were clear, and my sister's text messages proved knowing misappropriation. Going to trial would mean all of this becoming public record, possibly news coverage since it was a substantial amount, and definitely judgment against them. Patterson laid out their options in a meeting. They're proposing to repay the full trust amount, $134,000, over 5 years with 6% interest. Total payment would be around $155,000. They'd mortgage the house to get the initial payment, then monthly installments. And my sisters? I asked. They want to be released from the lawsuit. Your parents would take full responsibility. No, I said immediately. They knew what they were doing. They benefited directly. They stay in the suit. Patterson nodded like he'd expected that answer. The alternative is we go to trial, likely win, get a judgment that's legally enforceable but might be hard to collect depending on their assets. Plus, we can pursue your sisters for their share. What's the timeline? Trial would be spring, maybe March or April. If we win, and we will, you'd get a judgment for the full amount plus legal fees plus possible punitive damages. Could be $200,000 or more total. The money wasn't really the point anymore. It had stopped being about money around the time I saw those text messages where my sisters laughed about spending my trust fund. This was about consequences, about making sure they understood you can't just steal from people and expect no repercussions. We go to trial, I said. You're sure? Settlement would give you guaranteed money sooner. I'm sure. I want them in a courtroom explaining to a judge why they thought stealing my education fund was okay. Patterson smiled. All right then, let's go to war. The trial got scheduled for March. Both sides filed pre-trial motions. My parents tried one last desperate move, a motion to dismiss claiming the statute of limitations had run out since I'd turned 18 in June and didn't file until August. The judge denied it. Statute of limitations started when I discovered the breach, not when I turned 18. Since I didn't find out about the extent of the theft until my birthday, the clock started then. Meanwhile, my life was moving forward. I'd used my own $12,000 in savings, plus that remaining $8,400 from the trust to start community college. Enrolled in a 2-year mechanical engineering technology program. Lived at home, technically, since I hadn't moved out yet, but basically avoided my family completely. Moved into a friend's spare room in January. Paid $400 monthly rent. My parents tried to use that against me in the lawsuit, claiming I was abandoning family and being vindictive. Patterson shut that down hard. I was an adult, I could live where I wanted, and moving out after they stole my trust fund seemed pretty reasonable. I picked up a full-time evening shift at the auto parts store, plus weekend work at a mechanics shop. Between the two jobs and full-time classes, I was pulling 60-hour weeks. Exhausting. But I needed the money. And honestly, staying busy kept me from thinking too much about the fact that I was suing my entire immediate family. My extended family started picking sides. Mom's parents, my maternal grandparents, called me in February asking me to drop the lawsuit. Said I was tearing the family apart and making a mistake I'd regret. They offered to mediate, have a family meeting, work something out. I asked if they'd be willing to contribute the $134,000 my parents stole. They said that was different. That was between me and my parents. I said then we had nothing to discuss. They stopped calling after that. Dad's sister, my Aunt Janet, was actually supportive. She'd never liked how my parents spoiled my sisters, and she'd been close with Grandpa. When she heard what happened, she called to tell me she was sorry, that Grandpa would have been furious, and that I was doing the right thing. Your grandfather set up those trusts for a reason, she said. He wanted you kids to have educational opportunities he didn't have. Your parents disrespected his wishes and stole from you. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for holding them accountable. That phone call meant more than she probably realized. The trial started March 12th, 3 days scheduled, though Patterson thought we'd wrap in 2. Civil trial, so no jury, just Judge Harrison, a stern woman in her early 60s who'd been on the bench for 20 years and had a reputation for no nonsense. Day 1 was opening statements and beginning of evidence presentation. Patterson laid out the case methodically, showed the trust documents with clear terms, showed the bank statements with massive withdrawals, showed the timeline correlating withdrawals to my sister's weddings, showed the text messages proving knowledge and intent. My parents' attorney tried arguing that the trust terms were ambiguous, that post-secondary education could be interpreted broadly to include life education and family support. Judge Harrison actually interrupted him to ask if he was seriously arguing that a wedding was post-secondary education. He backtracked quickly. I had to testify. Patterson prepared me extensively. Answer questions directly. Don't get emotional. Stick to facts. Took the stand and walked through discovering the trust fund theft, my college plans that got derailed, how I'd had to completely restructure my life around my parents' betrayal. My parents' attorney tried to make me look vindictive during cross-examination, asked if I was doing this for money or to punish my family. I said I was doing it because they stole from me, and I wanted what was legally mine. Asked if I understood families sometimes made difficult financial decisions. I said stealing wasn't a difficult decision. It was a crime. Day 2 was my parents' turn to testify. Dad tried to present himself as a father who'd made hard choices to support all his children. Patterson destroyed that narrative by showing Dad's own financial records: luxury car leases, country club membership, expensive vacations. If money was so tight that he had to raid my trust fund, why was he spending $2,000 monthly on discretionary expenses? Dad couldn't answer that, just stammered about maintaining professional appearances and business networking. Mom's testimony was painful to watch. She cried on the stand, said she never meant to hurt me, thought she was doing what was best for the family. Patterson showed her the text messages where Victoria specifically asked to use my trust fund, asked Mom why she thought it was best for the family to steal from one child to give to another. I didn't think of it as stealing, Mom said. I thought of it as redistributing family resources. Did Finn consent to this redistribution? Patterson asked. He was a minor. He didn't need to consent. Did the trust documents require his consent? Silence. Did the trust documents authorize you to redistribute education funds to wedding expenses? Not specifically, but yes or no, Mrs. Patterson. Did the trust authorize wedding expenses? No. My sisters didn't testify. Their attorney advised them to invoke Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination. Meant anything they said could potentially be used against them in a criminal case if the DA decided to pursue fraud charges. Smart legally, but looked terrible in civil court. Judge Harrison asked their attorney directly, "Your clients are invoking Fifth Amendment rights in a civil trial regarding trust funds?" "Yes, Your Honor. They're concerned about potential criminal exposure." "Noted," she said, and the look on her face said everything about what she thought of that decision. Closing arguments on day 3. Patterson hammered home the clear evidence: explicit trust terms, documented violations, proven knowledge and intent, irreparable harm to my educational prospects. My parents' attorney tried to appeal to emotion, talking about families and forgiveness, and how money shouldn't destroy relationships. Judge Harrison announced she'd issue a written ruling within 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. Kept going to classes, working my shifts, trying not to obsessively check my phone. Patterson called me on a Thursday afternoon. I was in my car between class and work. We won, he said. Full judgment. $134,000 in actual damages, $45,000 in punitive damages, $28,000 in legal fees. Total judgment of $207,000. I had to pull over. $207,000. The judge had awarded me everything we'd asked for plus punitive damages to punish my parents for knowing violation of trust terms. Your sisters are jointly and severally liable for $89,000 of the judgment. Patterson continued. The amount that directly benefited them through wedding expenses and down payments. Your parents are liable for the rest, plus all punitive damages and fees. What does that mean practically? Means they have to pay within 60 days, or we can start enforcement proceedings. Wage garnishment, property liens, asset seizure. They'll probably have to sell the house. Your sisters will have to liquidate assets. This is going to hurt. Good. That's exactly what I wanted. The judgment hit my family like a financial nuclear bomb. My parents immediately filed for bankruptcy. Chapter 13, meaning they had to create a repayment plan. The bankruptcy trustee would take control of their assets, sell what needed to be sold, and distribute the proceeds to creditors. I was first in line as a judgment creditor. The house went up for sale within a month. Had to sell fast to pay the judgment. They'd bought it for $320,000 15 years ago. Still owed $180,000 on the mortgage. Sold for $385,000 in the hot spring market. After real estate fees and paying off the mortgage, they cleared about $185,000. From that, I got my $207,000 judgment, which meant they netted negative $22,000 from selling their house. They had to take out a personal loan for the remaining balance, plus moving expenses. They moved into a rental apartment, 2 bedrooms, about 900 square feet, in a significantly worse part of town. Dad's luxury car got repossessed when he couldn't make payments. Mom's leased SUV went back to the dealer. They were driving a used Honda Civic that was older than I was. My sisters fought the judgment initially. Victoria filed a motion claiming she couldn't afford to pay, that it would cause undue hardship. The judge wasn't sympathetic. Pointed out Victoria had a job, a condo that could be sold, assets that could be liquidated. The judgment stood. Ashley tried claiming she hadn't known the money was from my trust fund specifically, therefore shouldn't be liable. Patterson produced the text messages again. Can we use some of Finn's fund? Time-stamped and clear. That argument died fast. Both of them ended up selling their condos. Victoria's sold for a small profit. Ashley's broke even. They moved in together into a rental apartment, something I heard about through Aunt Janet. Apparently, they'd been fighting constantly, blaming each other for the lawsuit situation. Victoria's marriage was falling apart. Her husband Jake had never been particularly wealthy himself, worked in sales, made decent money, but nothing spectacular. When Victoria admitted they'd need to sell the condo and she was liable for $44,500 in the judgment, he apparently lost it. They'd been planning to start a family, buy a bigger house. Now they were looking at years of debt repayment. Jake filed for divorce 4 months after the judgment, claimed Victoria had misrepresented her financial situation before marriage, and he felt betrayed. Ironic, really. Ashley's engagement fell apart even faster. Her fiancé Brett had been planning this elaborate wedding. Seemed to be a pattern in my family. When he found out Ashley was $44,500 in debt from a lawsuit over her previous wedding expenses, he called off the engagement entirely. Said he couldn't marry someone with that kind of financial and legal baggage. My parents tried reaching out once after everything was finalized. Dad sent me an email. They had my email address from old family distribution lists. Long message about how I'd destroyed the family, how they hoped I was happy with myself, how I'd chosen money over relationships. I replied with one sentence. You chose money over our relationship when you stole my trust fund. I just chose to get it back. Blocked their emails after that. Aunt Janet invited me to Thanksgiving that year. Said she'd understand if I didn't want to come, but her kids would love to see me. I went, spent the holiday with my aunt's family. Her 2 kids who were younger than me but treated me like the cool older cousin. Normal family stuff, food, football, nobody stealing anyone's trust fund. Found out later, my parents spent Thanksgiving alone in their apartment. My sisters had gone to their respective in-laws' families, neither wanting to deal with mom and dad's bitterness. Finished my 2-year degree, got a job as an engineering technician at a manufacturing company, started taking evening classes toward my bachelor's degree, paying as I went with no debt. The $207,000 judgment was mostly paid off by that point through the house sale and asset liquidation. Used some of the money to actually take a vacation, something I'd never really done growing up, because we were saving money for important things. Went to Colorado, spent a week hiking and camping, met some people, saw some mountains, got altitude sickness, and threw up at 11,000 feet. Good times. Last I heard, Dad was working 2 jobs to pay off the personal loan and rebuilding his credit. Mom got fired from the real estate office. Apparently hard to sell luxury houses when everyone knows you're dealing with bankruptcy and family lawsuits. She was working retail part-time. Victoria got remarried to some guy she met online. Moved to Texas. We're not in contact. Ashley ended up moving back in with my parents temporarily, then got a roommate situation working out. Also not in contact. Aunt Janet updates me occasionally when I ask. Your mother called crying last month, she told me around Christmas. Said she couldn't believe her own son destroyed their lives over money. Over money, I repeated. That's how she sees it. That's how she has to see it, Aunt Janet said. The alternative is admitting she stole from her child's future for Instagram photos and champagne toasts. That's too hard to face. She was right. My parents couldn't admit what they'd really done, chosen their daughter's appearance of success over their son's actual future, stolen from their youngest child to fund their oldest children's lifestyle fantasies, violated their father's explicit wishes about education because weddings seemed more important. So they told themselves I destroyed the family over money, that I was vindictive and cold and chose dollars over relationships. Whatever helped them sleep at night. Meanwhile, I'm building the life they stole from me. Got a good job, working toward my degree, no debt, actual savings in the bank. Learning to trust people again, slowly. Made some friends at work. Started dating someone I met through a hiking group. Normal life stuff. The trust fund was supposed to give me a head start. Instead, my parents turned it into a decade-long detour. But I got here anyway. Just took a little longer and required a lawsuit to make it happen. Sometimes people ask if I regret suing my family, if the money was worth losing my parents and sisters. They're asking the wrong question. I didn't lose my family by suing them. I lost my family when they stole from me, laughed about it in text messages, and expected me to smile and say it was fine. The lawsuit just made it official. My grandfather set up those trust funds because he understood something my parents never did. Education is the one investment that can't be taken away once you have it. Skills, knowledge, credentials, those belong to you permanently. My parents tried to steal that future from me. They failed. Sure, it cost them their house and their reputation and their relationship with their youngest child. But that wasn't my choice. That was the consequence of their choice to steal. I just made sure those consequences actually happened, instead of getting swept under the rug like everything else in my family. Some bridges are meant to be burned, especially when the people on the other side already doused them in gasoline and were looking for matches. They got their fairy tale weddings. I got my education fund back, and the satisfaction of watching their fairy tale turn into a legal nightmare. Fair trade, if you ask me. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Story 6. My golden brother demanded half my business after years of no contact, and my mom backed him up, saying he's 10 times better than me. So I taught them a lesson they'll never forget for the rest of their lives. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but after everything that's happened in the past few months, I need to get this off my chest. I 35 male a software engineer who built a successful cybersecurity consulting firm from the ground up. My company now employs 47 people and generates about $12 million annually. Not bad for someone who started coding in his parents' basement 15 years ago. But this story isn't really about my success. It's about my toxic family and how they tried to destroy everything I'd worked for when they realized I'd actually made something of myself. Let me start with some background. I have a younger brother, Jake, who's 32. Growing up, Jake was the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, especially our mothers. While I was the quiet, studious kid who spent his time learning programming languages and building computers, Jake was the charming, athletic one who played varsity football and had girls constantly calling the house. Our parents, particularly Mom, made it crystal clear who their favorite was. When Jake needed a car for his 16th birthday, they bought him a brand new Mustang. When I turned 16 6 months later, they handed me the keys to our old Honda Civic that was already 8 years old and had 150,000 miles on it. When Jake wanted to go to parties, they'd give him money for gas and tell him to have fun. When I wanted to attend programming camps or buy computer equipment, I had to use money from my part-time job at the local computer repair shop. The favoritism was so blatant that even extended family members commented on it, but Mom would just smile and say that Jake needs more support because he's more social. Dad usually stayed quiet during these conversations, though I could sometimes catch him looking uncomfortable when mom's bias was particularly obvious. Jake coasted through high school on his charm and athletic ability, getting into a decent state university on a partial football scholarship. I, meanwhile, earned a full academic scholarship to MIT. You'd think that would have impressed our parents, but mom's reaction was to worry about how Jake would feel about his brother going to a better school. She actually suggested I should consider staying closer to home, so Jake wouldn't feel overshadowed. That conversation was probably the moment I realized I'd never be the favored son, no matter what I accomplished. College was liberating. For the first time in my life, I was valued for my intelligence and technical skills, rather than compared unfavorably to my brother. I thrived at MIT, graduating summa cum laude with a computer science degree, and immediately landing a job at a top tech company in Boston. Jake, meanwhile, blew out his knee junior year, lost his scholarship, and barely managed to graduate with a business degree that he never really used. But whenever I came home for holidays, Mom would spend hours talking about Jake's potential and how he was figuring things out, while barely asking about my career. The final straw came when I was 28. I'd just gotten engaged to Sarah, a brilliant data scientist I'd met at work, and I was planning to start my own company. When I shared this news with the family, Mom's first question wasn't congratulations or asking about my plans. It was whether I'd considered hiring Jake as a partner since he had a business degree. I politely declined, explaining that I needed someone with technical expertise, not general business knowledge, especially in the critical early stages. Jake laughed it off at the time, saying he wasn't interested in nerd stuff anyway, but I could see the disappointment in Mom's eyes. That Christmas dinner turned into a disaster when Mom kept pushing the issue, suggesting that as brothers, we should support each other's success. When I finally lost my patience and pointed out that Jake had never once supported my achievements or even shown interest in what I did for work, she accused me of being jealous of Jake's social skills and said I was being selfish. Jake sat there smirking through the whole argument, occasionally adding fuel to the fire with comments like, "Mom, you know how he's always been with money," or "Some people just aren't family-oriented." That was the last family gathering I attended. I went low contact after that, only responding to direct questions in family group chats and skipping holidays. Dad would occasionally call to check in, and I could tell he wanted to bridge the gap, but he'd never stand up to Mom's favoritism. Sarah and I moved to Austin 2 years later when I launched Secure Flow Solutions. The business grew rapidly. Turns out there's huge demand for cybersecurity consulting, especially from companies that have been hacked and need someone to fix their systems and prevent future breaches. Within 3 years, I had 15 employees. Within 5 years, I was pulling in 8 figures annually. I was careful to keep my success off social media and never discussed money with family during our rare conversations. Dad passed away from a heart attack 3 years ago, and while that was devastating, it also meant even less reason to maintain contact with Mom and Jake. The funeral was awkward. I hadn't seen Jake in person for almost 4 years, and he'd changed. Gone was the cocky athlete I remembered. He looked soft around the middle, had a patchy beard, and kept making comments about how lucky I was to have such a successful business. Mom spent the entire reception telling people how proud she was of both her sons, conveniently omitting the fact that she'd barely spoken to me in years. After the funeral, I expected we'd go back to our minimal contact routine. I was wrong. About 6 months later, my mom called me out of the blue. This was unusual. She typically only called on my birthday or major holidays, and even then, the conversations were stilted and brief. "Honey, I've been going through your father's papers," she began, "and I found something that I think you need to know about." She claimed that Dad had kept a journal where he'd written about his hopes for his sons' futures. According to her, he'd specifically written that he hoped Jake and I would eventually work together, combining my technical skills with Jake's business acumen. She said Dad had always dreamed of his boys building something together. I was skeptical, but I also felt guilty about our strained relationship and wondered if maybe Dad really had hoped we'd reconcile through business. I told Mom I'd think about it, but I wasn't making any promises. 2 weeks later, Jake called me directly for the first time in years. "Hey, brother," he said, using a term of endearment he'd never used when we were kids. Mom told me about Dad's journal. I've been thinking a lot about what he wanted for us. Jake explained that he'd been working various sales jobs since college, but had never found his calling. He said learning about Dad's wishes had made him realize that maybe we were meant to work together, that maybe he could help take my business to the next level. Despite my instincts screaming that this was a bad idea, I felt obligated to at least hear him out. We arranged to meet for lunch the following week when he'd be in Austin visiting friends. The lunch meeting should have been my first red flag. Jake didn't come alone. He brought his girlfriend, a woman named Melissa, who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. She was probably mid-20s, with long blonde hair, perfect makeup, and the kind of curves that made every man in the restaurant take a second look. "This is Melissa," Jake said proudly. "She's been helping me research your company and develop some ideas for how we could work together." Melissa smiled at me with perfectly white teeth and extended a manicured hand. "Jake's told me so much about you, David. I'm so impressed by what you've built. I have a background in marketing and business development, so I understand how challenging it must have been to grow a technical services company." I was immediately suspicious. Since when did Jake date women with business backgrounds? In high school and college, his girlfriends had typically been cheerleaders and party girls, not exactly the type to research cybersecurity companies. During lunch, Jake pitched his vision for our partnership. He wanted to come on as COO, handling all business development, client relationships, and company expansion. He claimed that with his people skills and business degree, he could help me scale the company nationally, maybe even internationally. "Think about it, David," he said, leaning forward earnestly. "You're brilliant at the technical stuff, but you've always been more comfortable behind a computer than in a boardroom. I could handle all the client-facing work, the networking, the big picture strategy. We'd be unstoppable together." Melissa nodded enthusiastically. "Jake has such natural charisma. I bet your clients would love working with him. And imagine how much more you could focus on innovation if you didn't have to worry about all the business side of things." I listened politely, but kept my responses non-committal. Jake seemed to interpret my silence as interest, because by the end of lunch, he was talking about specific percentages. "I was thinking a 50-50 partnership would be fair," he said casually, as if he were discussing the weather. "After all, Dad always said we were equals. And you'll need someone with real business experience if you want to compete with the big consulting firms." I nearly choked on my coffee. A 50-50 split? For someone who'd never worked a day in cybersecurity and hadn't been part of building the company from nothing. "Jake," I said carefully, "I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself. This is just an exploratory conversation." His face darkened slightly, but Melissa quickly jumped in with a dazzling smile. "Of course. We're just excited about the possibilities. Why don't we all get together again soon? Maybe I could see your office? I'd love to understand more about what you do." Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. There was an undertone to her voice, a suggestion that she wanted to understand more than just my business. After they left, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Jake had gone from barely speaking to me for years to demanding half my company based on some supposed journal entry from Dad that I'd never seen. And this Melissa woman, there was something off about her. I decided to do what I do best: research. That evening, I started digging into Jake's recent history. Social media stalking revealed that he'd been unemployed for the past 8 months, after being fired from a car dealership for performance issues. His LinkedIn showed a pattern of short-term jobs, mostly in sales, with gaps between positions growing longer over time. Melissa was more interesting. Her Instagram showed the lifestyle of someone with money: expensive clothes, fancy restaurants, exotic vacations. But when I did a deeper dive, I found that her marketing and business development background was mostly working for multi-level marketing schemes and consulting for small businesses that had all failed within a year of hiring her. Most telling, though, was that Jake and Melissa had only been dating for 4 months, but every single one of her recent posts was designed to look like they'd been together much longer. She'd even posted old photos with other men, but cropped them out and added captions about my love that made it seem like she and Jake had a long history. This was starting to smell like a con. I called my lawyer, Mike Chen, who'd helped me set up the company initially. I explained the situation and asked him to review my corporate documents to make sure there was no way Jake could have any legitimate claim to ownership. "David, unless you signed something or your father had some kind of ownership stake that I'm not aware of, there's no way Jake has any legal claim to your company," Mike assured me. "But I'd be careful about any new contracts or agreements, and maybe we should think about tightening up your corporate structure." Meanwhile, Jake started calling me every few days, each time more pushy about moving forward with our partnership. He'd send me articles about successful brother business teams and kept mentioning Dad's supposed wishes. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later when Melissa texted me directly. "Hey David, I was wondering if you wanted to get coffee sometime? Just the two of us. I feel like we didn't really get to connect during lunch, and I have some ideas that might interest you." The winky emoji made her intentions pretty clear. I decided to play along and see what she was really after. We met at a trendy coffee shop in downtown Austin. Melissa had clearly dressed to impress: a low-cut blouse, short skirt, and heels that made her legs look like they went on forever. She spent the first 20 minutes asking detailed questions about my business, my clients, my revenue, my expansion plans. Then she started getting personal. Jake's told me so much about your relationship growing up, she said, leaning closer. He feels terrible that you two grew apart. He really looks up to you, you know? This was news to me, considering Jake had spent our entire childhood treating me like an annoying afterthought. He's been researching cybersecurity nonstop since you two had lunch, she continued. He's so excited about the possibility of working together. I think he sees it as a chance to finally have the kind of relationship with you that he's always wanted. I made non-committal responses while she kept probing for more information about my business operations, my biggest clients, my profit margins. It was clear she was fishing for intelligence, not trying to build a relationship. Then she made her move. David, can I be honest with you? She said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I think Jake might be selling himself short. From what I can see, you've built something amazing, but there's so much untapped potential. Someone with the right connections could help you expand in ways you've never imagined. Her hand lingered on mine, and she gave me a look that was definitely not about business development. Maybe we should get together sometime when we can really talk, she purred. Without Jake around, I think you and I could accomplish great things together. Bingo. She was trying to seduce me, probably hoping to get insider information she could use to help Jake in whatever scam they were running. I smiled and played dumb. That's interesting, Melissa. What kind of connections are you thinking about? For the next hour, she fed me a line of bullshit about investors she supposedly knew, government contracts she could help me land, international expansion opportunities. None of it was specific enough to be real, but all of it was designed to make me think she was the key to taking my business to the next level. As she talked, she kept finding excuses to touch my arm, lean in close, or make suggestive comments about how we could explore possibilities together. It was both pathetic and infuriating. When we parted ways, she hugged me just a little too long and whispered, I hope we can do this again soon. I think we have a lot to offer each other. That night, I set up a hidden camera system in my home office and started recording every conversation I had with Jake or Melissa. I had a feeling I was going to need evidence of whatever they were planning. Sure enough, Jake called the next day, more aggressive than ever. Dave, I've been patient, but I need to know where we stand, he said. Melissa thinks you're interested in moving forward, and I don't want to waste any more time. I need to know if you're serious about honoring Dad's wishes. What exactly did Dad write in this journal? I asked. I'd like to see it before making any major decisions. There was a pause. Well, Mom has it, and she's not comfortable sharing it right now. It's too emotional for her, but she told you what it said. Jake, I can't make a business decision based on secondhand information about a document I've never seen. His tone shifted to barely controlled anger. Are you calling Mom a liar? Are you saying she's making this up? I'm saying I'd like to see evidence before giving away half of the company I built from scratch. Giving away? He exploded. This isn't giving anything away. This is honoring our father's memory and finally working together like a real family. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised. You've always been selfish when it comes to family. I hung up on him. 2 days later, Mom called, crying. David, honey, Jake is so hurt, she sobbed. He just wants to be close to his brother. Why are you being so stubborn about this? Your father would be heartbroken to see you two fighting. Mom, I'm not fighting with anyone. I just want to see this journal entry before making any business decisions. I can't show it to you right now. It's too painful. But I promise you, David, your father wanted his boys to work together. He was so proud of both of you. This was rich, considering Dad had barely known what I did for work and had never once visited my office or asked about my business. If Dad really wanted us to work together, why didn't he ever mention it to me when he was alive? I asked. Mom's crying intensified. Because he didn't want to pressure you. He knew you needed to find your own way first. But now that you're successful, it's time to help your brother. There it was. The real truth. This wasn't about Dad's wishes or bringing the family together. This was about Mom wanting me to take care of her golden child now that Jake had proven incapable of supporting himself. I told Mom I needed time to think about it, and hung up. That weekend, Melissa texted me again, suggesting we meet for drinks. I agreed, curious to see how far she'd push things. She showed up at the upscale bar wearing a dress that was barely legal, and made sure to sit close enough that her leg pressed against mine. After 2 drinks, she was practically in my lap. David, I'm going to be direct with you, she said, her hand on my thigh. I think you and I have chemistry, real chemistry, and I think we could help each other in ways that go beyond business. She leaned in close, her lips nearly touching my ear. Jake doesn't have to know about our private consultations. I could give you information that would help you make the right decisions about the partnership, and you could help me understand how a really successful man operates. I almost laughed at how obvious she was being. Instead, I decided to test something. That's interesting, Melissa. What kind of information are you thinking about? She smiled seductively. Well, I know Jake's been talking to some lawyers about his rights to the company. He seems to think he might have stronger legal grounds than you realize. But if we had our own arrangement, I could make sure you stay ahead of whatever he's planning. Now we were getting somewhere. What lawyers? I probably shouldn't say, she said coyly, trailing her finger along my arm. But maybe if we went somewhere more private, I could tell you more. I made an excuse about having an early morning meeting and left her at the bar looking frustrated. The next morning, I hired a private investigator named Tom Rodriguez, who specialized in financial fraud cases. I gave him everything I had on Jake and Melissa and asked him to dig deeper. What he found was even worse than I'd suspected. Tom discovered that Melissa's real name was actually Miranda Walsh, and she had a history of targeting successful men in various scams. Her MO was to identify wealthy targets, research their family dynamics, then position herself as someone who could help manipulate family relationships for financial gain. Jake, meanwhile, had been contacting lawyers, but not about legitimate ownership claims. He'd been shopping around for attorneys who would help him file nuisance lawsuits against my company, hoping to force me into a settlement rather than deal with prolonged legal battles. Most damning of all, Tom found text messages between Jake and Melissa. He had contacts in the cell phone industry who could access deleted messages for legal investigations. The messages revealed their entire plan. They'd been planning this scam for months, ever since Jake had discovered through mutual acquaintances how successful my company had become. Melissa had researched my business, my personal life, and my family dynamics. They'd coached each other on how to approach me, with Melissa playing the role of the supportive girlfriend while also being available as a backup plan if seduction worked better than family pressure. The journal story was completely fabricated. In fact, the text messages showed them laughing about how gullible I was and how easy it would be to manipulate me using Dad's memory. Their plan was multi-pronged. Jake would pressure me using family guilt while Melissa gathered intelligence through seduction. If I agreed to any kind of partnership, they'd use that foothold to gradually take over more of the company. If I refused, Jake would file harassment and discrimination lawsuits, claiming I was denying him opportunities based on family bias, hoping to force a settlement that would give him money even without ownership. But the most enraging part was a message from Jake to Melissa that said, "David's always been a pushover when it comes to family. Mom's got him trained to feel guilty about everything. This is going to be easier than we thought." Reading those messages made my blood boil. They thought I was some kind of weak, guilty pushover they could manipulate with fake tears and family pressure. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I spent the next 2 weeks carefully planning my response. First, I had Mike Chen draft airtight cease and desist letters to both Jake and Melissa, explicitly forbidding them from making any claims about ownership in my company and warning them that any attempts to interfere with my business relationships would result in legal action. Then I did something that would have been unthinkable a month earlier. I decided to go nuclear on my own family. I gathered all the evidence Tom had collected, the text messages, the background checks, the financial records showing Jake's unemployment and Melissa's scam history, and compiled it into a comprehensive dossier. On a Thursday evening, I called Jake and told him I'd made my decision about the partnership. "I've thought about Dad's wishes," I said, "and I think you're right. We should be working together. Why don't you and Melissa come to my office tomorrow afternoon? I'll show you around, we can discuss terms, and maybe we can make this partnership official." Jake was ecstatic. "David, you won't regret this. We're going to build something incredible together. This is what Dad would have wanted." I scheduled the meeting for 3 p.m. on Friday, knowing that most of my employees would still be in the office to witness whatever happened. Friday afternoon, Jake and Melissa arrived dressed like they were already executives of my company. Jake wore an expensive suit that he probably couldn't afford, and Melissa was in a power dress that somehow still managed to show enough cleavage to be inappropriate for a business meeting. I welcomed them into my office, where I'd set up a conference table with folders, legal pads, and water bottles, all the props of a serious business meeting. "Before we get started," I said, "I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're discussing here." Jake nodded eagerly. "Absolutely. I'm thinking we start with a 50-50 partnership, like we discussed, and then we can talk about expansion plans, new markets, maybe bringing Melissa on as our marketing director." Melissa smiled and nodded. "I have so many ideas for growing the business. I think we could double your revenue within the first year." "That sounds ambitious," I said, opening one of the folders on the table. Before we move forward, though, I need to address a few concerns. I slid a copy of the private investigator's report across the table to Jake. This is a background check I had done as part of my due diligence. Jake's face went pale as he saw the first page, which included Melissa's real name and a summary of her scam history. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. "It's the truth about your girlfriend and your little plan to defraud me," I said calmly. "Did you really think I wouldn't investigate before giving away half my company?" Melissa tried to maintain her composure. "David, I don't know what you think you found, but I know your real name is Miranda Walsh," I interrupted. "I know you've been involved in at least 4 similar scams targeting wealthy men. I know you've been coaching Jake on how to manipulate me using our family relationships." I opened another folder and pulled out copies of their text messages. "I also know that Dad never wrote anything about wanting us to work together, because this entire story is something you two made up. These are your text messages discussing how to fool me." Jake's face had gone from pale to red. "You had our phones hacked? That's illegal." "No, Jake, it's not. This was obtained through a legitimate legal investigation, which brings me to the best part." I opened a third folder and pulled out copies of his communications with various lawyers. "I know you've been shopping around for attorneys who would help you file nuisance lawsuits against my company. I know your plan was to either manipulate me into giving you ownership or force me into a settlement through frivolous legal action." By now, both Jake and Melissa were looking like trapped animals. Jake stood up abruptly. "You know what, David? Fuck you. I don't need your charity. I was trying to help you out of family loyalty, but clearly you don't give a damn about family." "Sit down, Jake," I said firmly. "We're not done." Something in my tone made him hesitate. "See, the thing is, I do care about family. I care about protecting myself and my business from family members who think they can scam me. So I've taken some precautions." I opened the final folder and pulled out copies of the cease and desist letters Mike had prepared. "These are legal notices formally warning both of you to stop making any claims about ownership in my company and to cease any attempts to interfere with my business. If you violate these terms, I will sue you for harassment, attempted fraud, and business interference." Melissa found her voice. "You can't prove we did anything illegal. Maybe not criminal fraud," I agreed, "but I can prove attempted extortion, harassment, and conspiracy to interfere with my business relationships. I can also prove that you've been using a false identity and have a history of similar scams." I leaned back in my chair. Here's what's going to happen. You're both going to sign acknowledgments that you have no claim to any ownership in my company. You're going to agree to have no further contact with me, my employees, or my business partners. And Jake, you're going to tell Mom the truth about this whole ridiculous scheme." Jake's jaw dropped. "I'm not telling Mom anything. She believes in us working together." "Oh, but you are," I said, smiling for the first time since they'd arrived. "Because if you don't, I'm going to send copies of this entire investigation to every member of our extended family, along with a detailed explanation of how you tried to defraud your own brother using Dad's memory." I pulled out my phone and showed them the draft email I'd prepared with about 30 family members in the recipient list. "I'm also going to post it on social media and tag everyone we went to high school with. I think they'd be very interested to learn what Jake Morrison has been up to lately." Melissa looked like she was going to be sick. "You wouldn't actually try me," I said flatly. "I built this company from nothing while dealing with a family that never supported me. You think I'm going to let you destroy it with lies and manipulation? You picked the wrong target." Jake was staring at the email on my phone, probably calculating how many people would see it and how humiliating it would be. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "I want you to sign these agreements, leave my office, and never contact me again unless someone is dying. I want you to tell Mom that you lied about Dad's journal and that this whole partnership idea was a scheme you cooked up because you're unemployed and desperate." I stood up and walked around the table to face them directly. "And I want both of you to understand that if you ever try anything like this again, if you ever mention my name to a lawyer, if you ever claim any connection to my business, if you ever come anywhere near my employees or my office, I will dedicate every resource I have to destroying your lives. I will sue you into bankruptcy. I will make sure everyone you know understands exactly what kind of people you are, and I will use every contact I have in the business world to make sure neither of you can ever find decent employment again." The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Jake reached for the pen. "This is really fucked up, David," he muttered as he signed the papers. "No, Jake," I replied. "What's fucked up is trying to steal from your own brother and using your dead father's memory to do it. What's fucked up is bringing a con artist into our family to help you commit fraud. What's fucked up is thinking you could manipulate me the same way Mom manipulated me when we were kids." Melissa signed next. her hand shaking slightly. There's one more thing, I said as they prepared to leave. Jake, I want you to call Mom right now and tell her the truth. I'm not. You're going to call her, put it on speaker, and explain that you made up the journal story because you wanted money from me. If you don't, that email goes out to the family in 1 hour. Jake's shoulders slumped in defeat. He pulled out his phone and dialed Mom's number. Hi, Mom, he said when she answered. I'm here with David, and I need to tell you something. Oh, that's wonderful. Are you boys finalizing the partnership? Jake looked at me with pure hatred in his eyes. No, Mom. There's not going to be a partnership. I need to tell you that I made up the story about Dad's journal. There was a long pause. What do you mean? I mean, Dad never wrote about wanting us to work together. I made that up because I thought I could convince David to give me part of his company. I could hear Mom's sharp intake of breath through the phone. Jake, what are you saying? I'm saying I lied to you and to David because I'm broke, and I thought this was a way to fix my problems. I'm sorry, Mom. I know this is disappointing. The silence stretched out for nearly 30 seconds before Mom spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. Jacob Morrison, how could you do this? How could you lie about your father's memory like that? For the first time since I'd known him, Jake looked genuinely ashamed. I'm sorry, Mom. I was desperate and I thought, you thought you could steal from your brother and drag me into it? She said, her voice getting stronger. You thought you could use me to pressure him into giving you something you had no right to. Mom, it wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, she snapped. My God, Jake, what has happened to you? Jake looked at me again, probably hoping I'd intervene, but I just stared back at him impassively. I'm disappointed in both of us, Mom continued. I'm disappointed in you for lying and trying to cheat your brother, and I'm disappointed in myself for believing you without question. David, are you there? I'm here, Mom. Honey, I am so sorry. I should have asked more questions. I should have realized I just wanted so badly for you boys to have a relationship that I didn't stop to think about whether this made sense. I felt a tiny bit of my anger toward her soften, but only a tiny bit. Mom, we'll talk later. Right now, I need Jake and his girlfriend to leave my office. Jake has a girlfriend? Mom asked. Jake shot me a warning look, but I was done protecting him. Her real name is Miranda Walsh, and she specializes in conning money out of successful men by manipulating their family relationships. She and Jake have been planning this scam for months. The silence on the phone was deafening. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice cold as ice. Jake, you get yourself home right now. We are going to have a very long conversation. After Jake hung up, he and Melissa gathered their things and headed for the door. Jake paused at the threshold. David, I know you hate me right now, but we're still brothers. I looked at him for a long moment, thinking about everything we'd been through. The years of favoritism, the constant comparisons, the way he'd treated me growing up, and now this ultimate betrayal. No, Jake, I said finally. Brothers don't try to steal from each other. Brothers don't lie about their dead father to commit fraud. You're just someone I used to know who happens to share some DNA. He flinched like I'd hit him, but he didn't argue. After they left, I sat in my office for a while, processing everything that had happened. My assistant knocked on the door to check if I was okay. Apparently, the tension had been visible even through the glass walls. I called Sarah to tell her what had happened. She'd known about Jake's initial approach and had been suspicious from the start. I'm proud of you for standing up to them, she said. I know that couldn't have been easy. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For the first time in my life, I'd refused to be manipulated by family guilt and had protected what I'd worked so hard to build. Over the next few weeks, I heard through Mom that Jake had moved back in with her temporarily while he looked for work. Apparently, Melissa Miranda had disappeared immediately after our confrontation, leaving Jake to face the consequences alone. Mom called me a few days later to apologize again and to ask if there was any way I could forgive Jake. Mom, Jake is 32 years old, I told her. He's not some confused kid who made a mistake. He spent months planning to defraud me, brought a career criminal into our family, and tried to use Dad's memory to steal from me. Those aren't the actions of someone who deserves forgiveness. But he's your brother. No, Mom, he's your son, and you can have whatever relationship with him you want. But he's not my brother anymore. Brothers don't try to destroy each other. I wasn't completely heartless, though. A month later, when I heard that Jake was genuinely looking for work and had enrolled in a community college program to get some new skills, I had a friend who runs a small marketing company give him an interview. Jake got the job, an entry-level position that paid about a tenth of what he'd been hoping to steal from me, but it was honest work. I never told Jake that I'd helped him get the interview. I figured if he was really trying to turn his life around, he could do it without knowing I'd been involved. As for Mom and me, we're slowly rebuilding our relationship. She's made a real effort to understand why the favoritism hurts so much and has acknowledged that she contributed to Jake's entitlement issues. We have lunch once a month now, and she's made it clear that she's proud of what I've accomplished.